Hello and welcome to episode 186 of the Imperial Truth podcast. My name's Greg. Joining me as usual is Mr. Howard. Hello, Howard.
Hello, Greg. How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, not bad. Yourself?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Very good. As usual, I've got a few snacks lined up. I've got some hobby around me. I'm feeling pretty good.
Good. I made the schoolboy error of not having a drink to hand, so that'll be the first break. We'll be running off to get a drink. So I'll try and keep the voice, try and keep the throat as lubricated as I possibly can. If I was searching for any kind of refreshing liquid in range, but I haven't left anything in here. But hey ho. Anyway,
You are really. You're going to tough it out. You're going to really. You thought you'd go with a real
suffer for my art.
endurance experience.
Yeah. Indeed. So before we move on, Element Games are wonderful sponsors of the podcast. You can go and get anything you want there, pretty much. I saw a few people putting in some orders over the weekend. I think for the Kill Team box, probably. That's
Nice.
something I'm going to have to wait for till near Christmas, I think. Or actually, no, tell a lie. I think one of the guys at the club wants some models, so I'll probably be buying bits and pieces of books and stuff off them once he's distributed models and things. Looking forward to that, but you can go and get maybe some plastic Mechanicum from them at some point in the near future, and basically anything you want for Heresy or pretty much any other game you choose to play.
There's a few bits and pieces coming paints-wise as well, paints and hobby supplies-wise. I know there's a new Harder and Steenbeck have been slowly releasing new airbrushes, and Element have got a good collection of their range of stuff on there. So it's always worth throwing it out beyond the models as well with Element, because they have such a good range of stuff. And I believe Element have opened a new store.
Yes,
I seem to remember
Birmingham. Yeah.
Yes, they're slowly reaching out to other parts of the country.
I'm not. That one's got a couple of tables in it, so their Nottingham store is the only other one I've been to, and it's very tight and has no gaming facility at all. So because someone was posting up about it, so I looked. But there are a couple. I assume it's for demo gaming and maybe a couple of games in store rather than anything else. It's very much a store rather than an event centre, I believe. But for sure, there's plenty there to be going and getting excited about if you're that way to go and collect your stuff. It would be lovely to have one nearby.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm all for them expanding that empire.
I mean, to be fair, I have a local store that I like to use in Crowborough. I'm going to shout out Ashdown Gaming, but they don't. The stock levels that Element keep are quite incredible. Even for like that Nottingham store is just properly rammed with stock. So you go in there and it takes me forever to look through all the stuff, but you can go and search your stuff. In fact, so what I wanted to say about Element, they have got a clearance sale that's usually on, and a lot of the time, like the bottom items, there's old edition rule books or army books and things like that, and for all kinds of different games as well, and obviously stuff that hasn't sold as well or stuff they want to move on to just make space. They've got it even maybe for the order period and don't want to maintain a regular stock of it. But within it, it's got Elegoo resins. It's got like proper random stuff. You've got some random paints and stuff. You've got to be lucky to find those kind of things that you want. But it's worth looking up. Here we go. Where was I? I've lost my
Well, it surprises you, doesn't it? Worth checking, because I would be amazed things like resins are on there. That's good to know.
So you've got things like the Broken Realms Kragnos, which was like the end end of last edition of Age of Sigmar book on there for £8 rather than £27.50. Obviously, they're trying to get rid of old stock. But as you go to the more useful stuff, if you play Old World, they got some Tomb King stuff on there and like Tomb King skeletons down for a horseman from 40 down to 30, which isn't it's a pretty good discount. The Dracosans on there for Solo Auxilia Horus Heresy, 42.75. I got a shed load of them in.
Okay.
So it's an extra little bit off. Legions Imperialis Civitas Imperialis Terrain 2362. Spies
That's good.
2062.
Wow.
Yeah.
How'd you get there on the website? Where is it? Is it
So
under War Games
if
and
you go,
Reviews?
no, on their homepage, as you scroll
Yeah.
down, it's normally like 5th or 6th down. Maybe it's a bit more on this one. It's a little bit further down. Oh yeah, this is about halfway down the page. Element Games clearance section.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah. Brightly coloured one. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh, wow. Like you say, there's lots in it. Yeah.
every now and then it's worth just having a little look in there. Things like Blood Bowl teams pop up in there occasionally. They've got a couple in there. Yeah, so you never know. You might find something you like. Just thought I'd shout that one out. There we go. And then, of course, if you want to use them, we have a link that helps support the show. And we also have both of our element codes on the on the show notes. Mine's GRE259. Do you know yours off by heart?
No, it's not something I would have
just
committed. Let's have a.
that's
It's got an H and a T in
strawberry
it.
error. Is it?
Hold on. HOW. It doesn't have a T in it. HOW 583. Everyone. HOW 583.
I'm about to say normally it's the first 3 letters of your name, so I was surprised with the T.
I was guessing. I was wrong. How 583. Bit too how for now, but yeah, that'll
How
do.
for now. That's one for the international listeners.
I was going to shout out to a very particular vintage of listener there.
And we've had a handful of people use our Warhammer merch link as well around Joy Toy, actually, for most of them. I think I don't know if someone listened last time and was like, "Ooh, jump on that that event that's happening with the Joy Toy figures," but there was a couple more sold on there. So again, if you look for anything on Warhammer merch, we have a link for that as well, which is in the show notes, and on the link tree on Twitter, which I need to get everywhere else, which I still probably haven't done. So you can use that as well. And again, it all just helps pay for the hosting and all those kind of little things, bits and pieces. Anyway, Howard, have you been doing any heresy?
Yeah, I have actually.
Yeah, you've been busy.
It's Iron Warriors. Iron Warriors were a thing. I've even played some games. Who knew? Iron Warriors were a thing. Not Age of Darkness. I had some games of Legions Imperialis with a good friend of ours, Stu, who had travelled all the way over to had the cheek to travel halfway around the world to set up in Sydney, and he travelled back because he had some work to do, and it was his 50th birthday. So we had a lot of celebrations of that.
Over 46, does
he? He's looking more of a long beard now than a blood claw. So he was over. So we had some games of Legions Imperialis, and I had that thing you do when you think, "Oh, I'm highly organised with all of that. Let me just put a little force together." Oh, I've put units all in different places around the house in different states of painted or it being built or whatever. Oh, where did I put those counters again that I put in little plastic coin case things so they're actually usable rather than the paper ones you get in the box? Trying to draw all that together on the night before the game. I was like, oh, damn it. And realising my Space Marines were in no way usable in a game. Anyway, had a couple of games, 2,000 points. It was the first games I'd had Legions, and it was brilliant. Really enjoyed it. Really useful learning experience on the first game, and then having done that, we tweaked the game a little bit, tweaked our forces, and had a really good, close second game, which was really enjoyable. Yeah, down at Bad Moon here in London. I've been doing bits and pieces. I picked up. We've been working on some Iron Warriors, like I say, doing some chevrons and some masking, that sort of getting that done. A couple of Iron Circle. Big guys who you forget how big they are to build those. A couple of characters. It's stuff that I've had sat kind of half built for years in a case, and I just thought, right, I need to start. I'm really trying to double down and get these organised into usable forces. I want to try and get some 2,000 point armies set, packed away in a case, so that if friends pop over, say let's do a game, you don't need to bring anything. just rock up.
Sure.
I can set it all up and we just play. And I'm well on the way to doing that. Yeah, so that was the main thing. I've got a few bits came in the post today, a few bits from Battle Bling to build out a few of those. Going to do a bit chunky things like armored sponsons for Proteus Land Raiders, that sort of stuff. So I'm going to try and have some cool chunky things for those Iron Warriors as well, rather than go to some of the older things. I've got some Mark 2B kits that I was like, can I be bothered with that? Or actually, let's go with the Proteus look on this sort of stuff. So those arrived today and are looking pretty good. Got to go through those, but
Nice.
so it's quite a busy period. What about you?
Yeah, you know me, not a lot. Just things and like just so many little things get in the way, right? One is computer games. Two is
Oh
like,
yes, that's the thing. I weakened on that and went for that the last couple of days.
oh, have you? Oh, I haven't bought Space Marine yet. Space Marine 2.
Oh right,
I'm holding off
mistakenly
on that
assumed
one at
that's
the
what you meant.
moment. No, I've
Hmm.
got a playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3, which I'm almost finished with, but I have found out that there's some really secret stuff in Baldur's Gate 3, like literal secret levels that I've only just found out about almost a year after it's come out. So I'm like, oh,
Amazing.
next playthrough, what might I do? And then there's Space Marine 2, obviously, and Blood Bowl 3 is the killer because there are goblins and halflings available now. And halflings are the greatest team to ever grace a Blood Bowl pitch. And I've been smashing face with them, so
Oh
quite
wow.
literally smashing people's faces. So that's always fun. So yeah, there's a little bit of that, and then there's things like, oh, okay, cool. Oh yeah, my wife's side of the wardrobe has decided to fall apart. Okay, so that's our Saturday evening.
Delightful.
Will be spent building new wardrobes in a room that's really difficult to build wardrobes in. Yeah, all
Brilliant.
the time gets swallowed up in doing other things, and it's also bonfire season down in the southeast of England, in a little town called Lewes, the county town of East Sussex, near Brighton. A few hundred years ago, they burnt a load of witches or people for being witches, and essentially the whole of East Sussex from early September through till late November is all about bonfires and fireworks. Every weekend there's at least one big
Oh
fireworks
wow. I
display in a
didn't know it was
local
such a big
town.
deal. Okay.
Oh, big time. So Lewis is the big one, which almost always happens on November the 5th, unless it's a Sunday, where
Hmm.
I like 20,000 people try and get into Lewis
Oh
and crowd the streets, and you can't park within like 3 miles of it and all that kind of stuff. It's mad, but like so all the villages then have them in the thing. So there's going to be a few nights lost to to go into
yeah,
them.
yeah.
If anyone, most years I end up putting a video up of Lewis Bonfire on Facebook, and a few American people really are like, okay, that's super cool. Look up Lewis Bonfire Parade. It's I don't know how long the parade is, but it's like you get like 15 villages sending their towns and villages sending their parades, and people dress up. It's all fancy dress. Everyone's got a theme. So there'll be cowboys in one. There'll be Second World War one. There'll be Romans. There'll be Vikings. There'll be Victorian era, like ladies and gentlemen, in one, and then they all build an effigy as well. All the bonfire societies. So like Millennium, there was like the Millennium Bug, and then in the one because Lewis has 4 or 5 different societies, and they
Hmm.
each have their own bonfire around the town, and they each have their own fireworks display around the town as well on the same
Hmm.
night. So yeah, it's something. So yeah, you if you're down this way, bonfire season is a proper season, carnival, all that. So
Very cool.
lost a
Okay.
couple of nights, that kind of thing. But yeah, all that to say, I haven't done a lot, as is usual. But I
Yeah.
did play an event, so we will talk about that in a minute. So I've got some gaming in. You've got a wonderful new table setup. So,
Someone may have twisted my arm to say I've got this very impressive looking Zone Mortalis board that I bought a little while ago, which, if I remember, I was contemplating at the time, and someone moved a little bit quicker than I did
yeah.
at the moment and went in and picked it up. And it's been sat there, and as you say, you moved it on, and it's found a home not a million miles away. Has it left the box that you brought it round in? No, it hasn't.
It's only been
which I do want to set that up.
a short period. So,
but yeah, very grateful for you bringing that back after that event, and looking forward to hosting a few games with that.
Yeah, it's a 6x4 Zone Mortalis board with some loose terrain on there as well, and with a big gate at the front as well. All the plastic stuff from GW, it looks fantastic. So
yeah.
hopefully
Looking
we'll
forward
get
to a
some
few
pictures
games with that.
Some games up on that, I think.
Some units on that. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, cool. A little bit going on.
Stuff.
I mean,
stuff. Considering how quickly it felt like September has rattled by, I don't know what I blinked and missed it. Just what happens when you go away. I suppose you go away on holiday. It does feel like that. You got prep for the holiday, and then recovery from, and then before you know it, it's all over. But considering that, there was actually quite a bit going on. Maybe we'll touch on games and things a bit later. But yeah,
pretty much more than GW have going on with Heresy at the moment. But,
oh goodness me, yeah. Yes, the news isn't going to take very long, is it?
No. Let's just jump straight into it. Let's not even have a break because it will not take very long. Essentially, a lot of the time we go on Warhammer Community and drag our news sections from that, so it's all official news. There are 2 Heresy items. One of them is some spiel about the Eidolon book, which we knew was coming, but hopefully means it's coming sooner rather than later now, by Mark Collins. I will say friend of the show.
Interesting, actually. I was about to say something similar to that. Yeah, Mark Collins, Black Library author. If I believe
Black
you have to
Library
shout
author
that
Mark
across.
Collins, indeed.
Actually, he does enjoy that. Yeah. It's part of the Horus Heresy character series.
Yes.
I know a few people who are into Black Library. Friend of the show, Dan, who is across all of the channels of Warhammer Community. In other words, that had sort of passed him by, passed a few people. I didn't realise that either. So that's quite interesting to see that it's part of that series, which actually piques my interest a little bit more. I thought it might have been an Eidolon set at perhaps a different period, but it is part of the Horus Heresy character series.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but they did that with Luther, and Luther isn't Heresy. It's quite a long period, over quite a long period around that. So it's much like the Primarch's books. Is there an interesting story to tell about someone within this character series, and when will we do it? So they will, even Kurz's book is not Heresy, quite some time after. So yeah, but the character is famous through the Heresy, and I'm sure most of them will be in and around the Great Crusade Heresy era. Wouldn't be surprised if we see some scouring stuff as they go forwards with more of these, which hopefully they will do. But yeah,
the cover suggests that it's Heresy era, but who knows? What can you tell from a book cover?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's Eidolon is Eidolon. It's certainly the book. If you read through the article, it talks about him being he's the soul severed. So it's dealing. It's post those incidents which see him come back, and the cacophony and everything else that goes with it, and who knows? So we got that one coming, which I'll get straight away, and then, well, quite surprisingly, we've got coming to Warhammer Plus. We have a Horus Heresy era animation coming.
We do.
Kill Lupercal. So it's the first animated series set in the Horus Heresy. Now, we did have the Iron Warriors one, which was originally going to be Heresy, and then got repurposed. But this is full Heresy, and it's one of Terra's last loyal titans in the closing hours of the Siege of Terra. So I'm really looking forward to that, because for all the grief that Warhammer Plus gets, I really like some of their animation. So
particularly some of the more contemporary ones they've been putting together. They seem to be leveraging a few more of those assets and presumably teams that they've had put together those sort of what would you call them? The intro videos to a new edition, that sort of thing. There's
Yeah,
clearly quite a lot of that's being utilised. And this one looks like it's a rendered one, I think. Looking at this little teaser video that they put out, it's a 3D one rather than some of the 2D animation style ones that they've had elsewhere. So, yeah, looks quite exciting and very interesting to see it focus in on Titans and the Siege. That could be very cool.
yeah, absolutely. And then there was one, well, so there's unofficial news which ties into, well, we don't know if it ties into, but we're presuming, and I think most people are guessing, but we have the Warhammer Day 2024 preview announcement, so on the 5th of October, and it's Chaos themed. We have 40k Age of Sigmar Kill Team, Warhammer Underworlds, and Legions Imperialis, which, bearing in mind the leaks have hit the internet of a box of Mechanicum for Legions, which was, they did talk about new armies, didn't they, in the Nova preview?
They did, but most people interpreted that, and I think it appeared to be quite clear that the other factions, other than those that we already have, were going to be quite a bit further away. That's how people interpreted what was said.
I mean, we don't know.
Out comes a leak showing that image, which is we don't know when this is coming. Of course,
No, absolutely.
This could be quite far away. So, but it does look. It's quite as leaks go. It was quite a comprehensive one to show the collection, almost like the range that appeared to be there of a Mechanicum faction or a core of. Looks very cool.
Yeah, it does.
Speculating, maybe that will be on here, but maybe it's one of these much further out leaks. Who knows?
Yeah. I think with it being, there aren't many leaks they don't address within a period of time. The major one was the Heresy launch thing, but that was because it was a year early. So you would presume there's something out. We got Heresy. We're recording this before Heresy Thursday, so who knows what they put up. Maybe they do that with Heresy Thursday and we get something new. I mean, that's the dream, right? Is that preview show, they show us something completely different. So we've got multiple things to be excited about. That would be even better, yeah. We don't know what they're going to show there, but
they did say in that, and I used inverted commas here, in the roadmap shows and interviews, and the interviews were generally quite interesting. They did mention the close combat weapons sprue or upgrade set, and we would see that really very soon.
They did.
That seems a prime candidate for a Heresy Thursday. Is it this Heresy Thursday? Who knows? It could be.
Yeah, it should be.
Equally, there's a bunch of characters, of course, that were in the Martian Civil War that logically there are going to be nice models of at some point. They could be candidates for that as well. As they were for Beta Garmin, the Beta Garmin books. So who knows? There's a whole range of different things it could be. But this is obviously this Warhammer preview day. I'm cool that it's got a Chaos theme. But that would make it a bit of a stretch. I mean, you could do it, couldn't you? Dark Mechanicum, I suppose. So that same set of units that's in that leak, but in a different paint scheme for Legions Imperialis. But bit of a stretch given a Chaos theme. So maybe it's something else. But then, are they going to release Chaos things for Legions Imperialis, like demons? I don't think so. I've got no idea. I mean, I will be sad, but exactly, it seems such a niche force. Surely, that's not what they've been doing.
I just think timescales on that is different. I think the Mechanicum can be used across both. Good, like in terms of big army choices, like range of people buying it, Mechanicum fit better. However,
and then same as Marines.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, once they've, I'm talking real down the line, but your Talons might see some love, that kind of thing. Demons are a well-loved epic force. Like when you think of some of the demon engines, the Primarchs, and that kind of thing, that I would be surprised if Andy didn't want it to come for whatever value that has. but
And of corn, here we come.
yeah. Well, yeah. That there are some proper. You look at some of the nostalgia hits that are coming with
Yeah, it's pretty
Necromunda,
rich. Yeah.
Blood Bowl, those two particularly, and you think, yeah, this is what, like, when you try and look across, and predict what they're going to do, and people they'll never do demons. I don't know if people are saying that or whatever, but say it's a statement. You look at some of the stuff in Necromunda, and you're like, hold on, they brought in squats through Necromunda. They're jumping into other hives, which the background was around it. Obviously, they're adapting it and moving it and things like that. But the ambots, like, why have we got ambots all of a sudden? That are in there and stuff like that. There is a definite appreciation of some of the older stuff going on, and maybe they're modernizing it or whatever. But brilliant, cool, fine. I would love to see a chaos demons force down the line. I think it would be. I think you're talking easy money, because I think
I had
certainly
forgotten,
people of a certain age.
to my deep shame. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That 90s, particularly, probably even late 80s, early 90s period of epic Space Marine and epic Titan Legions and the wacky vehicles and things that you were only getting in that Lords of Skulls, for example, some Lord of Battles, those sorts of things. Yeah, that Chaos Army was very in that red period, and the bright colours.
Siege.
I mean, that's where we saw Demon Primarchs for the first time.
Yeah, exactly. The
There's some
siege towers.
rich stuff in that. Yeah, Silver Towers were in there.
And Silver Towers as well. Yeah, and the like there's plenty of super cool stuff.
Those supplements that came at that period, they did these box supplements for the extra army. So Renegades was the box supplement. I remember it vividly. It's got a World Eater on the front. Pretty classic scale of World Eaters attacking a thing. That was Eldar and Chaos, and that is a hell of a book. And it's got some bonkers Chaos machines. And as you say, a version of that with contemporary designs and technology would be pretty cool. So yes, who knows? But that feels unlikely at this reveal. So what they're going to do at this point?
Yeah, I think it's way too early.
Yeah.
But, I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if they were just like, boom, demon, like
the left field
I think
part of it would be amazing. Yeah.
we're probably a year or so, or 2 or 3 off for that to happen. But who knows?
You have piqued my You've kindled some hope there, because it just hadn't occurred to me, of course, that it could pick up on that particular strand of nostalgia, and it absolutely could. Not that this one, but in the future. Very cool. Anyway, so that's upcoming 5th of October. I'm going to be watching that excitedly. No Heresy in there, but I'm surprised there's it's actually quite a range of stuff they're covering.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, we're in this. I don't know. It does feel so quiet with the Heresy stuff, doesn't it? But we know there's more Mechanicum to come, so maybe they feel they don't need to show off too much with the Heresy Thursdays doing something every Thursday. Hopefully they'll be pushing some of that Mechanicum stuff, and we're in that period where it's ticking along, shall we say?
The thing that a lot of people jumped on with that Legions Imperialis Mechanicum image that's leaked out is that it's the first time there's been a model of the Arlatax.
I had an Arlatax.
Converted
Arlatax.
Yeah. Based on the Domitar, or maybe the Domitar is based on the Arlatax. I'm not sure which came first. in the lore, I think the Arlatax. Anyway, regardless, similar kind of thing, but a faster, close combat orientated one. Maybe we'll see something of that in the future for Heresy. Sort of makes sense, given that they've explored the principal shapes. Yeah,
I don't think you're getting good odds on it. No. You're not going to make a fortune on assuming that's going to happen at some point in the future.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Groovy. So that was about it we got for Heresy. So let's take a break. There, I think, before we go is the main subject. We did have a correction, a sort of correction. We talked
an addendum?
about An addendum, definitely an addendum. Makes it sound all proper. An appendix. We have so we talked about last time one of the very few things that jumped me out of the Mars book was Sigismund having the black sword at Mars and not having had it at that point. It was brought up and it was pointed out. It was brought up elsewhere and was pointed out that in the black books he had the sword, the original Heresy Black books. So it's one of those things, like his character, his fights with the black sword. So it's not necessarily now incorrect either way. It is multiple tellings of the same story. We're not entirely sure where the black sword comes from. The historical writers of the black books say he always had it, and the novel series suggests he may have got it some time later. But you can argue either, and therefore it still works in this black book. So fair play. Take that back. Sorry, guys.
Interesting. Yeah,
It was
but it's
nicely
interesting that
pointed out.
there are two separate sort of not interpretations, but two separate versions.
Yeah, and there are with a lot of things. You know, the writing for the game side and the writing for the novels sometimes diverge, shall we say. Anyway, there we go. Let's crack on. Okay, let's talk about my trip to Dark Inferno and Attrition Gaming and Greetings from the Warp event. So these take place up. Oh, where do they? Strange name of a town, but it's Irthlingborough. Irth Lingborough, Northamptonshire way, somewhere up there. It's a few hours drive for me. Is it Northamptonshire? I think it's beyond that. Anyway, up that way, wherever it is. Greetings from the Warp have run events at this place for donkey's years. They used to do 40k events and stuff as well. And Attrition Gaming are guys based on the south coast down Portsmouth way, who have had to change the venue they use, but they were putting on this event using the Greetings from the Warp crew, Andy and his lot, to make this event work. It's a single player event. It was 3,000 points, I think it was. I'm trying to remember now. Blimey, only a week and a half ago. I'm trying to remember the deets. And I mean, you know, a lot of people will be familiar with those names, particularly Greetings from the Warp, if they're online or listen to any podcast, because as I say, they do make a few and have been doing it for quite a long time. Let me get my my little list up of what's going on. So, kind of the traditional event for this kind of for where we are now in the Heresy of 4 games over 2 days, which yeah, I've said my piece on that before. But hey,
Feelings unknown.
Indeed. Let me try and get new recruit. Bless it. Trying to get into my actual Heresy list. Here we go. There we go. I love new recruit, by the way. People list building as a list building device. The fact that I can have all my game systems on one place that isn't Battlescribe is brilliant. Love it. So there was a I must admit, Greetings do a really good job, and Attrition, actually, both of them have done. Attrition do a really good job of displaying the information without. Let's start that again. I had a good chat with Neil, who's one of the main guys from Attrition Gaming, on the Saturday, as he was. I think it was between the games, They very much have an approach of they're going to write a load of background, and it's
Mhm.
a couple of pages, maps, some background of the event, and then the missions and that kind of thing. All goes into their pack. They even put the games in these packs that they gave out on the day. How to do how everything works, like everything you'd want in there, with say that some of the background as well. And they're very much we've put the background out. You can read it or not read it. We're not going to do videos. We're not going to do huge amounts of what's going on once you're at the event because they either don't have the skills in terms of and the time in terms of making a video presentation or voice
Mm.
recording or all that kind of stuff. Completely understandable. If it's not your thing, it becomes quite a hard thing to do well. If it is your thing, people can throw them up and make them look good. They can spend a bit of time and make them look really good. But they've chosen to have a light touch towards that.
Okay.
So, like basic background, Hyperion Expanse. People go and fight. It's not badly done, but essentially that's always what the background comes down to, right? The games then have that little description within that of where you're fighting. What's
Mm.
quite nice is they link back to their background sections. So yeah, that a really kind of professional way of showing off. They even print off your booklets. It's an interesting one actually. Should events be giving out booklets to every player when there's 100 people bought tickets?
I was going to
Or
say
should we?
there's no small undertaking that they're
No,
committing
it's
to
not.
with all of that. I mean, there's a lot of logistics to sort that out. You've got to produce the thing in the first place. You've got to
Yeah.
actually author it and stuff. That's
Oh,
quite a commitment.
glossy paper, all
Yeah, it's
stapled
nice.
together, like professional, like looks like a professional product.
Yeah, it's sounding good.
Color.
Sounding slick.
Um,
Yeah.
is slick. I say they've all their events that I've seen. The pack looks very similar in terms of production. They've obviously got it set up in a way that it can do it. But should we be giving out 100 of these
Mm.
in today's environments? There's a question that we can put out there. It's certainly simpler. It's more work, but simpler than having to have QR codes and people question
Mm.
stuff. Like it's all in the book in front of you where you are. Like you get less issues that way. So, yeah, I completely understand that. I took demons to this event. There were some list building restrictions, so no Primarchs or named characters. Uh, only officially printed rules. Um, Dreadnoughts limited to a maximum of 4 and not in talons. Telepathy librarians are maximum of 1. And Ruinstorm armies taking an Archdemon are limited to a maximum of 1 Demon Sovereign. So for those who don't know, the Archdemon is the Lord of War choice, which is pretty good. And the Demon
It's
Sovereigns
the
are
big scary
the
one. Mm-hmm.
the 1 HQ choice that everyone wants, which are also pretty good. The reason that's in there is because a friend of mine, Alex, took 3 Demon Sovereigns to an event and did some bad things to people. Yeah, got some theories about the demons with that, which was, it's fun. But we'll get onto that at the end. So obviously, yeah, I'm playing demons, and my list. Take a little look at the list I used. So I had a demon sovereign, shock horror. In fact, okay. So before we get into that, I had the encroaching ruin etheric dominion, which basically means move through cover. That's the one reason you take it is move through cover because demons don't have frag grenades, so you don't want to be fighting
Mm.
last in every combat, or being slowed down because or this army particularly, but mainly you're a combat army. So I had, so I had a sovereign, and he basically, I think most people go the same way. Like with the wings, so he's got full flight, 14 inches, I think it is. Waterfall flesh, 2-up armor save. I took the unmaking, which is essentially a melter gun 2-shot melter gun. Some people don't take that, but I'm playing essentially a Khorne themed force, so I have no shooting, well, very little shooting, no psychic powers. So if someone brings a number of land raiders, I'm relying on only close combat to destroy those land raiders, which means I'm only getting people out of the vehicles. I'm not killing them in combat afterwards. So it gives me a chance of blowing up a vehicle and then killing what's inside. And he's got a Sovereign Great Blade. So for those who don't know why the Sovereign is a beast, he is, as I say, this one flies. Their stats are pretty good. Weapon skill 6, I think it is. 6 wounds, something like that. Strength 8 on the first turn, because demons have +1 strength and toughness on the first 2 turns. So strength 8 on the first 2 turns. Toughness 7, I think it is, on the first 2 turns. And the Sovereign Great Blade is +3 strength, so strength 11, AP 1, brutal 3, murderous strike 5+. And because you're a monstrous creature, you ignore the unwieldy special rule. So I don't know why they didn't take that out, because only monstrous creatures can take it. Yes, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
Right. When it hits, it hurts. So I got him. I had a Harbinger, which is a smaller demon HQ, and I had 3 bodyguard dudes with him. So that's 1 unit. Essentially works like a command squad. Can't come off of him. And he's essentially the same, similar to the brutes, which are really good. But he's another character. He can be used to allow troops to be summoned on. It doesn't work quite like that. It's a little bit different. But if you want to keep something off the board and bring them on down the line, he can be used to do that. And then I had 7 beasts, which are cavalry, really fast. 5 brutes, the really good unit. I had 2 line units in 10 demons in each squad, because I didn't have my swarms painted up. I had 10 flying lesser demons, harriers. And then I took 2 behemoths, which are the heavy support choices. These sound really good when you look at their strength 7, toughness 6, 7 wounds, 3 up save, which I upgraded to a 2 up save. They have a behemoth blade, which is brutal 3 with sunder. And if you roll 6s, it's AP1 onto wound, it's AP1 rather than AP2. Sounds really good. They're initiative 3 with weapon skill of 4. So
right, okay.
A bit limited, and they're 430 points each. So yeah. And then I took, as I say, the Ruinstorm Archdemon. Now, the reason he's limited with the other guys, again, I got 2 up save. He can fly. The other 2 beasts, all my big stuff can fly. He had the Unmaking as well, which is the melter gun shot. Just going back to check what I did there. Yep. So he's got a little melter gun just in case, which half the time you don't even fire because you've only got a few shooting attacks. You don't want to get shot back, so you don't fire it to give them reaction. But so he has. Oh, I pressed the wrong button on here. Fat fingers. So he's good because he's weapon skill 7, strength 8, toughness 8 with 8 wounds, 6 attacks, so 2 up save, and all 4 of those big guys have got a 4 up invulnerable as well. And he's also got the brutal 3 sunder blade.
That is a blade and a half, isn't it?
Yeah. So he's strength 9, toughness 9 for two rounds. So there's no messing around with he's not instant. He's instant deathing toughness 4, but anything if you're Morlocks with your what's it called, battle hardened, where you're +1 toughness for the purposes of all that stuff. He's not killing them direct, but they're still making them take 3 saves, that kind of thing. He's a brute because his weapon skill 7 as well, so he's not taking many hits back. So I've got 2 really good units. The brutes are to 3 really, because 5 runes Runestorm brutes are good against like basic line troops. The behemoths are big, but not necessarily scary because they're weapon skill 4. But they fly, so there's 4 big things flying. And as I say, it's all corn. It runs forward. I can't even remember what my sovereign does. I think my sovereign, if you had his warlord trait, is if you had an independent character in a unit on the turn I charge, he can gets +1 to hit, something like that. It's Eternal Reveler. Here we go. Yeah, it's something like that. Basically, it didn't come up very often because the nature of what he was going into. So he may declare charges during his assault phase, even if he's run, which is the big thing. And then and they count the. Oh no, that's right. I forgot they could do this. You can choose not to roll for the charge distance. Instead, they count the charge distance as equal to the initiative of the warlord.
Ooh, okay.
It can't be increased in any way. Now his initiative is 6. So it just means you're not going to fail those little charges.
Yeah.
Which, again, when you're relying
That's
on
quite nice. Yeah.
when you're relying on 1, 2, 3, 4 things to do all the damage, you
Yeah.
need to make sure they're doing the damage. So yeah, so that was my list. Solid. I mean, nothing special. I don't think. It's certainly against. If I came up against the wrong armies, it was going to be very quickly over.
Yeah.
Turns out,
It might be
most
something that various people hadn't encountered before.
There's
but
always that, and that can certainly help, and did help in a couple of games.
That's kind of the benefit, though, of going to an event, is that you're going to encounter stuff that you might not normally see, like demons.
For sure. There were armies at this event that were like 5 land raiders and whatever, and if people sit in their land raiders against an army like this, I'm kind of stuffed, and then you get out when they're slightly weaker, so you can hurt them with more guns and things like that. It can go wrong very quickly. So let's get on with it. Let's not hold people up. Mission 1, Scarlet Sands. Let me have a little look back at the testing my memory as much as anything else. I played David Beavis. Beams. I can't remember. My handwriting there is terrible. I was obviously scrolling that down. So, highly unstable, poses a great risk to life. Yeah, there's kind of the background to it is sort of Legion specific, in terms of the site of a fierce clash between Imperial Fists and Night Lords. And the Night Lords have set up a brutal ambush here, which isn't necessarily relevant specifically, but it's like a desert. There's a dust storm in effect in the mission. So on a 4+ at the start of each turn, visibility is reduced to a maximum of 24, and all weapons targeting any unit with an armor value gain Sunder if they don't already possess it, because the storm's corrosive. So this 4+ limited in the range ignored Auspex's whatever you name that can, Night Lords, whatever rule you've got that can get past your visibility, that can extend ranges, anything like that. It ignored all of that. So that was the idea. Really good for me. Right, cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
I might not get shot as much turn 1. Brilliant. That sounds really good. And this was Dawn of War deployment. I think it was each objective is worth 1 VP at the end of the game turn to either player if they control it. There were, how many objectives were there? I'm trying to find them now. 3 objectives, one in no man's land, across the centre of the table. For what I liked about these missions was they were the traitors and the loyalists have different parts of the primary mission. So in this one, each objective is worth 1 VP at the end of the game turn if they control it. Also, at the start of the Loyalist player's turn, if they control one or more objectives, they may select one under their control to begin a data download. That unit gains a 5+ shroud but may not shoot or react. They may fight in assault if charged but may not initiate a charge. At the end of the game turn, the data is downloaded and 3 VPs are scored instead of 1 VP. The objective is then removed. On the traitor side, any Loyalist unit eliminated whilst holding an objective is worth 1 VP to the traitor player. This is increased to 2 VP if the unit contains an independent character.
Okay.
So he's got to stand and hold objectives and can score extra points on those objectives, but obviously not interact. I've got to kill stuff, and killing independent characters gives more VPs. So I'm up against David's Knight list, which was a Castigator, 2 Lancers, and 9 Armigers of different varieties.
Oh wow! Right. Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, this.
That's
I
a
don't
force.
know.
Wow.
It's a strange one because if he could just
Knights
shoot
versus
me and shoot
demons.
me and
Yeah.
shoot me, there's a chance he can do fairly well. This was a super fun game. He got the first turn. It was like, oh, really? Okay. And he didn't push up the board too much, which I think actually was the right move. At the end of the game, he said he should have been more aggressive, but he didn't want to give me easy charges. And with the speed of the Lancers, so they can get like 22 inches across the board without a stress. They're that quick. So I'd already deployed to try and, okay, if you come in, you can kill some rubbish stuff. Fine. And all his Armigers have got, I think he had 3 double shooty ones and the others with the melter guns and the chain blades. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, they're brutal. They're going to hurt me if they hit. And Lancers are going to hurt. Well, Lancers and the Castigators are a bit weird because they don't necessarily have enough attacks to do
No,
it
and
all in one go.
they're not destroyer, are they? And they're brutal
No,
2, I think. Or
something like that. Yeah.
their weapons are
Oh,
not like scary.
well, I can't
They're
be in
not in the
combat
realms of
with
the
them.
blades that you've got.
Well, yes and no. Against the right targets, they're okay. I
Yeah.
can't
Okay.
be in combat with them
Well,
for
they're not
too
bad by any
long.
means.
No.
Hmm.
So essentially, he ended up charging in. So I didn't shuffle that much. I shuffled like kind of didn't want to step out and get absolutely charged by 3 knights in one round. I was like, I'm happy. I'm going to give you
Funny that. Yeah.
your one objective and try and come around and deal with some other stuff. And excuse me, so leave like one line scoring unit at the back to try and jump on an objective at the end of the game turn and see if I could give you targets and maybe they'll survive if I can be clever with them, which essentially is what that one unit of 10 corn dudes were just like, I'm just going to hide off here as far away from everyone as possible and hope you roll up so you can't see 24 inches, which only happened once everything was within 24 inches. It's the only time he rolled it.
Oh, okay.
But the Lancer came in, did a job on a unit. I countercharged. So it was turn 2, took one Lancer down to 1 hit point, the whole point left. I was like, awesome. That's a good start.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry, that was turn 1. That was turn 1, the one that came over. I
Turn
was like,
1, you
okay,
got it down to 1 hull point.
I'm going into it. No, I charged it in turn 1. Turn 2, I got it down to 1 hull point, I think. He very kindly because I just forgot that knights can't be locked in combat, even by monstrous stuff, even by
Right.
Lords of War, but he kind of said, I'm not going to do anything with it anyway. I'll just charge into you next turn. I was like, fine, cool, thank you. Nice chat about that. Castigate's like shooting stuff up. I'm taking wounds. And I'm like, a Sovereign, if I don't do it in turn 2, I suddenly become very open to taking a lot of shots. His melter guns because he was shooting at my Lord of War to start with, but he's toughness 9 turn 1, so that's saving him. The 4 up invulnerables saving him a little bit, but he's still taking the damage. And the Sovereign goes down to like toughness 6. So like need to work hard on these things, and I can't be locked in combat, so I can't hide from that aspect of it. So he ended up running away, the Lancer, once it got down to 1 hull point. I've gone in on the Castigator and the other Lancer with the big stuff that's left. Like one of my Behemoths is like on 2 wounds and he's desperately trying to run away at this point. The Lancer, him and the Lancer have done a good job on each other. My Sovereign goes in with his Strength 11 blade and can't break armor, and like does like 1 or 2 hull points, like glances, and the one glance and then get through and then roll a 4, like no damage. The reason his other one was on 1 hull point left was because one of my Behemoth with his Sunder got through and then rolled a 6 with with the AP to do the explosion to get D3 on him, or whatever it is now. It's changed now. But my Sovereign basically did nothing, and then my Lord of War went in and onto the Castigator and basically did nothing.
Well,
Well,
so annoying.
compared to
So
what they should
frustrating.
do, should I say? Compared to what they should do.
They were below what you would expect for their average. Yeah.
Yeah. But at one point I got all 3 knights down to 1 hull point left. And I'm like, right, okay. So, look, that means they're all effectively unharmed in terms of how much damage they can deal.
Yeah.
Which is the terrible bit.
No
and meanwhile,
degrading stats.
I've got these 9 armigers over the other side, of which I've done a long range charge with my beasts into tie 1 up, and then like stop him being able to move. Like I'm going to lose some, but I'll hold, because the other part of the Dominion is you only take 1 wound instead of D3 when you fail a morale check. So charge in, lose combat. Oh, cool. Taking another wound. Fine. I'm still there, and I'm locking you down on this side. And I did another charge as well with some beasts into another one to start holding some stuff down. And then he's brought his lance around to try and get at me on that next turn.
Yeah.
And he's decided to shoot my I think it was my Sovereign, because my Sovereign was taking wounds. So I shoot my Sovereign with his with his Lancer, and I think I saved the wound, and retaliated with my little melter gun, blew up his Lancer, which
with a little look
with
of
a little melter
destruction.
gun. Oh yeah. And the unmaking, I unmade his Lancer, which blew up.
Wow.
Yeah, and reached his Castigator, which blew up.
He
And it was
daisy
like,
chained off of
finally,
that one
thanks.
little thing.
Yeah, it was like I shouldn't have shot. I'm like, no, I got away with it. Like, because there's a chance he kills my Sovereign, but he certainly weakens him really down. And yeah, I'll probably do kill him back in combat if I survive. But yeah, to not even get his hits in to do it is quite sad.
Yeah.
But I don't think I killed a single armiger in this fight.
That's interesting.
I did get
that kind of
I got
force. Yeah.
well, because the
Just tied
game,
them
I
up,
mean,
basically.
the game was 4 turns with a 4+ to get a 5th turn. It took 4 turns to kill the knights effectively.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, actually, do I want to charge my wounded, Sovereign into any of those armigers? Well, no, he needs 5s to hit, but if he gets 1s or 2s, he's doing wounds and they are brutal and he will kill me. And if I charge a twin autocannon one, then they're going to stand and shoot me back. And the only ones I did
Those
charge,
autocannons are no joke, are they? They're
yeah,
pretty potent,
like
those
my
autocannon shots.
my little Behemoth did end up charging the armiger that was always on the objective, like couldn't react, couldn't shoot, so it was reducing how much. So he didn't want to do that right. He couldn't do it right at the start and didn't want to do it. And then I was managed to charge that one on the turn that it mattered, kind of thing, and hold him up. And meanwhile, I've got a Lord of War kill, whatever it's called now. I got Giant Killer. I got Slay the Warlord. I had he got break the ranks. I had Last Man Standing. I think just like by running units away, like 3 dudes left in this unit, hide them. like try and have more units than him at the end of the game, and it finished 6-5 in the 5th turn.
Oh,
Yeah, it was a cracking game. It was one of those real like I thought I was in trouble for half the game, and then it was like, oh, I can do this if I try and do all these things, and things like the beasts charging. He ended up charging one of his armigers into those beasts to try and clear them out. But I mean,
yeah.
I'm weapon skill 4, he's weapon skill 4. A few bad rolls, you're not doing any damage. You know, a cheeky 5-up save here. Um, you know, 2 cheeky 5-up
Coming down to
saves.
pretty fine margins then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is really good. But the kind of the demons charging into stuff just to, with no hope of killing anything, kind of became a bit of a thing through the weekend. So yeah, game 1 was really good fun. Game 2, what was this? This was James Hamilton with his Iron Warriors, and he had a cheeky little Raven Guard reconnaissance
That old classic
right of war
matchup.
section. Yeah, so this was a did I say Iron Warriors?
You did say
Iron
Iron
Warriors?
Warriors.
I did say Iron
Iron
Warriors.
Warriors or Iron Hands?
Good question. That would be Iron Hands. Sorry, that is Iron
Well, now
Hands.
that makes a
That
bit more
makes more
sense.
sense.
Okay.
There's a Shattered Legions themed list where you take
Okay,
all the Iron
that's cool.
Warriors, and then the Raven Guard reconnaissance. I can't say the word. My mouth isn't working properly. Reconnaissance. There we go. Allows you to, on a 4+, you bring your reserves in better and whatever it is. It's the cheeky little allied detachment that buffs the rest of your army. And he had some.
The Legions Imperialis special. Yeah.
Yeah, he had some Morlocks. He had a Leviathan, I think, that dropped in, some Morlocks, and this mission was so 4 objectives randomly placed. We were like 1 in the traitor deployment, 3 in no man's land. So we just spread them across the middle of no man's land. Why not? There's no seas on this one.
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting. 4 turns with a 4+ for a 5th turn. So primary objectives, traitor. Each objective represents a target that must be lasered. At the end of each game turn, the traitor player scores 2 VPs for each objective they hold. An additional D3 VP are scored if the loyalist player doesn't hold any objectives. Once scored, the target is considered lasered and cannot be scored again. The loyalist player must destroy as many high-value traitor units as possible, so 1 VP is scored for each HQ or heavy support unit destroyed. Loyalist player scores 1 VP for each objective they hold in no man's land at the end of their player turn. And then in this one, so destructive and fierce aerial battle, basically planes were falling out the sky. End of each game turn, roll a scatter dice in a 46 and then measure the distance from the centre of the board. Last template, we ended up not doing that a lot, to be honest. We did it once or twice, I think, but then kind of forgot about it. But I don't think it would have changed anything. Yeah, this was an interesting game. So his Raven Guard deployed on. This is the Vanguard Strike, the weird triangle deployments.
Yeah.
So the one nearest my table edge, my long table edge, he put all the Raven Guard on, and then he set up his Iron Warriors to Zerg rush the other 2.
Right.
And knew he was going first, so he's holding all 3 objectives turn 1. It's like, okay, cool. And he's got a big las cannon squad, I think it was. Which was kind of horrible. So
Makes
I
you
was
sit up
just
and
trying
take notice. Yeah.
to hide stuff from there, not giving him good shots and things he wanted. So I think he ended up firing them into like my brutes turn 1, which I'm like, fine, you don't instant kill them. It's only 1 wound per thing, There might have been 10 guys, if I can't remember, maybe it was 8 or 9. But even hitting on 2s, like 7 or 8 hit, like you fail 1 or 2, a few cheeky 5-up saves. I might lose 1 and a bit turn 1, fine.
Not horrendous. Yeah.
but because I guessed his Raven Guard were gonna scout to where they did, I put some fast stuff over there to make sure I could get in enough to make sure I could kill it. And then I was like,
Yeah.
okay, the middle one, I'm going to put the some brutes on. And they can deal with attack squads. That's fine. Then on the other side, I'm going to put my Sovereign and my Lord of War over there to make sure I completely crush that one, because also I might be able to hide myself from his long range shooting then. And essentially, I did just that. I killed all those Raven Guard in one turn. I went into. I didn't take that that other objective off of him because of troops being stubborn on the objectives he held,
Oh, of
which was
course. Right.
perfect because it held me in combat. So didn't mind that one at all. And in the middle, my brutes did the job and cleared out the house. I was like, cool. I'm not going to score anything this turn because I need my line troops alive, so they need to do. They need to concentrate on in the two areas and just try and survive for a bit. And so it was going quite well. Like I cleared up that side, and then all of a sudden, this Leviathan, these Morlocks drop in the middle and like shooting and murderizing the squads in the middle. I'm like, okay, right. I don't know that I can deal with the Leviathan with a snippy claw because although my Sovereign can go in and do it in one turn, if he doesn't, he takes a lot
Yeah.
of punishment back. It's a real.
Yeah.
If the dice betray you just a smidge, you're in trouble. But I'm like, I have to kill the Morlocks. So, okay. Here comes my Sovereign, here comes my Lord of War. Both of them straight into that unit. And he lost his Sergeant, like was the first one to die. Because he warmongered them in, that's right. So the Sergeant took a wound from deep striking. The Sergeant was off. But essentially, he chose not to challenge my Sovereign out with any
Right.
character. And that is a tricky one. So the defense against the Sovereign is they can be challenged out. Like if you've got a champion, he can stand up, take all the hits. You're still going to lose combat by a lot doing that, but
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to lose many guys and they can all hit back. The problem with the Lord of War going in as at the same time is they can't hit him back. They have to kill the Lord of War, which is a bit of a mix, right, as to what you do.
Mm.
I rolled quite well, or pretty decently with my Sovereign on this one. He's like, cool, I'm battle hardened. And I'm like, cool, I'm strength 11 and brutal 3. And it was like,
Yeah.
and I got all my hits. I think I hit every hit. And it was like, okay,
Bloody
that,
hell.
that makes the difference. And wipe them out. And
Wipe them out. Bloody hell.
yeah, well, I mean, he's got 6 attacks, like, and each attack is killing
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Entirely
and
possible. Yeah.
and they're 5 up. Even if they weren't strength 11, they're still 5 up for whatever it's called, the killing blow. Can't remember what it's called now.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So it's like if he works on that turn, it's really good. But if he leaves any alive, he opens himself up to a few cheeky 5 ups, brutal on
Mm-hmm.
fists or whatever it is. You're going to take some damage. But because he leapt on all those objectives turn 1, he got a few points, and then he was like, right, what's a heavy choice? What's an elite choice? I need to kill them, which is absolutely the right way to do it. He did that well, and got 6 victory points. The problem with that was it left my line troop alive to go and stand on an objective. So I think the couple of times that I held the objective, I managed to make sure he wasn't holding his because I'd killed all of his line stuff. So I was getting 2
Right.
VPs for what, because my other unit was dead, plus D3 VPs. But I
Mm-hmm.
was rolling ones for most of them. But I got his warlord. He was in. Did I get the warlord? Oh, yeah, I'm pretty sure I got the warlord. I didn't write that down. Actually, I should have done that. I think I got last man standing by some judicious kind of. Oh, I need to go and kill that. I need to make sure that I got more units than you. Again, run this guy away so he survives. I mean, to highlight it, I charged 5 brutes or 4 brutes, whatever I had left, into a Dreadclaw. Took it down to 1 hull point, and then it and then the turn flipped over, and I lost 1 strength on everything. And the only things that could kill that Dreadclaw were my 2 big creatures that were left alive. I had
Oh
nothing that
wow. Okay.
could hit because there's no rending in the army. I
No, it really
if
shows how it
if I
flips. Yeah.
if I wound you on a 6, I go to AP1, but I don't get any rending to get through or anything like that. And I was having to keep my sovereign alive, and I was having to pick on the units. Again, there was the Hounds Charger unit. Oh, do you want to overwatch them because my sovereign's coming in a little bit later? Yeah, that it was those
Mm.
kinds of things. Oh, and that's where my flying unit comes in really good. It's like they're charging you, those 10 flying dudes who are rubbish. It's like, okay, do you risk them not? Do you hope they don't make the charge and then try and shoot the sovereign, or do you
Mm.
just try and take the shot that you've got there? So that's a tough one. But yeah, it was a. I think had he played, maybe not gone for holding all 3 objectives, there was a chance that he could maintain the Raven Guard squads with their sniper shots. It could potentially have pinged them away at some of the bigger targets because as they go down, you can wound them with a furying 15-man Legion squad will do some wounds, but it's whether you can get past the 2+ armor save.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they will at times. The Imperial Fist later didn't do a bad job of it at times, but yeah. So I took that game, but that was a fun game. It was a
What was the
interesting one.
score? Sorry, I missed that.
It was 9-6.
9-6. Okay.
Like
Had
snuck it.
either of these guys played demons before?
Yes, I can't remember. Certainly, David knew. I think it was David knew. I don't think they played them regularly.
Right.
I don't think anyone was like really. Oh, maybe one of them was. I'm trying to remember now. It's a week and a half is a long time. But yeah,
Have you played knights much? I mean,
no,
I would say
no,
they're a similar level of rarity.
yeah. I've played the odd knight and the odd armiger, but not
Not the household.
no. And he was very much like, oh, it's they're not that good, and they do. So I'm like, they're not, but actually, a castigator sword is really good against demons because it's high strength and deflag rate. So every
Well,
time you're getting
as the game
through.
pointed out, as the game points out, as your game turned out to be, it's a very cool matchup.
Mm,
Cool imagery.
yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, as well, it's almost a similar thing with the knights. Like he's got his 3 big things, and then the armigers can do stuff, but can also be a little bit unreliable. It's like, well, actually, a third of my army doesn't do anything or doesn't do a lot at all. I'm reliant on my 4 big dudes, 2 of which have only got weapon skill 4, and my brutes. And I'm, if there's a tough target, the brutes are only good for 2 turns really, so they need to be up in your grill doing that thing. So it's a challenge. But hey, it worked. Game 3, we'll move on. Jack Brinkhurst, a Salamanders army. There were about like 4 Salamanders armies there. It was really cool.
That's really
Um,
cool. I'd love to
he,
see that because they look great, but you typically have seen them underrepresented.
yeah, he had quite a bit of shooting that worried me. So yeah, well we'll go through the missions. So this is 2 objectives to set up in the loyalist player's deployment zone, at least 6 inches from a battlefield edge and 12 inches from each other. So he spread them to like the far sides. Um, 4 turns with an optional 5th. Traitor players must breach the shield. Traitors score 2 VP if they hold either objective in the loyalist deployment zone at the end of their player turn. If they hold both objectives, that becomes 5 VPs instead. Loyalists must prevent the traitor forces from reaching the facility. For each line unit that ends the game turn in the traitor deployment zone, the loyalist player scores 3 VPs.
Okay.
Score will be modified by -1 for each objective in the loyalist deployment zone. Get my words muddled. No Man's Land is bombarded by a graviton disruptor designed to protect the Nexus reactors. All units entering No Man's Land except for Zoomy Flyers, suffer a -2 modifier to all move, run, reaction, consolidation, and charge moves. That's the turn you go in only. In addition, the first time any vehicle, dreadnought, automata, or mechanized unit moves into no man's land, that unit takes D3 automatic hits with the Haywire rule.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah. So he had, I'm trying to remember that, he had a unit of autocannon heavy support squad, I'm pretty sure it was. He had some predators.
What legion is he?
This is Salamanders.
Salamanders, you did say.
Was it heavy support squad? He certainly had, like, on his left flank, he had predators with Volkites and autocannons, I think it was, and yeah, some good shooting on one side. And then on his other side, he wasn't so powerful. There was some combat units. Did he have fire drakes? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, he had fire drakes. Must have had fire drakes. Yeah, I think he did. But there was this big piece of. Luckily, on this table, there was a big, decent piece. I mean, decent. It was a big piece of terrain, like a wall thing, and I deployed almost all but one of my behemoths in the left third of my deployment zone. And that one behemoth was the only thing that was in range of the heavy support squad, and potentially some of the lines of sight for some of the predators as well, because he got first turn, and he ruined that beast. It was still alive, but it was like, oh shoot, he has to get out there. And meanwhile, my army ran up a third of the board to swamp one side. And that was my plan. It was like, okay, can I get a unit onto that by the end of the game? And can I stop his unit getting onto mine at the end of the game? And it's going to come down to the secondary objective: slay the warlord, break their ranks, last man standing. And again, it was a really tough one. Like, this is the one game where I put some bloodletters in, like, held them off the table and brought them in via the Harbinger's rule, because I just didn't want them being shot. Because I needed, if he killed two of them, I can't win it goes down to only secondary objectives. And then on his side, the only problem with my deployment was he had one tactical squad on that far side that could just charge across the board. I got first. They had break their ranks is their first, kill something in the first game turn, which is the only game I was ever going to get it in, because he moved a rhino into the deployment zone, took three haywire hits, didn't roll any ones, and destroyed a rhino. I was like, result. I mean, it was, compared to some of the bad results. That's right. Sorry, I don't know if he had heavy support squad. He had 2 dreadnoughts on that side, because he was pushing them up the table to shoot me, and they took some hits. But again, 1 or 2 wounds lost on a contemptor is not a great deal. But yeah, the game was eventually me swarming that left-hand side, hiding the Sovereign because he was on a few wounds, going into his big stuff with everything when I had to, because he had a Land Raider with the fire drake. I'm 99% sure he had the fire drakes. So going in there with my Brutal 3 and the Brutal 2 to make sure that every time I hit someone, like, they were going down, because it's instant death as well because of the strength. And the only problem was that squad running across the table. I had to swap out my wounded behemoth for a good behemoth who somehow got the final turn charge onto that unit to destroy them. So he didn't get any of those points, basically, or he got 1 turn of those points. So it somehow ended up being a 7-4 win, but like, don't quite know how, kind of thing. He had more units than me. I had very little left on the table, really. I got break the ranks, or maybe I didn't get the warlord. It was tight. It was real tight. But a fantastic game. It was nice to play against salamanders. I cannot remember the last time I played against salamanders. Probably at the club about 5-6 years ago.
As you say, nice to have it, and it being a solely salamanders force, not a mixed battered legions type force or otherwise.
No,
or as an ally. I mean, it's nice to have that, and I've seen some really nice looking salamanders with that. As a colour scheme, it just looks great.
Yeah, he had. I wish I'd taken more notes on this game, actually. Or what's that other? unit they have? Pyroclasts. Yeah, they
Yes,
are
fire
quite
drakes and
scary for a
terminators,
demon.
pyroclasts.
Yeah, because the pyroclast can put out a lot of big shots. Again, it was charging stuff in to make sure they can't move before charging everything, like lining your charges up, making sure they're right, to pin stuff down so that he can't reaction melt a gun shot my toughness 7 model that wants to charge in. But yeah, it was a fantastic game. Had I not had that big piece of terrain or suitable line of sight blocking terrain, the Predators would have done a job on me. Like, they're the perfect for taking out even the Behemoths, actually, particularly from turn 2 onwards. They'll do the damage, but for taking out the base troops and even the brutes, they're just they're doing so much damage. Decent rate of fire, high strength, decent AP, particularly, it's only 4+ for most of the demon units anyway, and then 6s to rend as well. They're good options. And then game 4, I played Richard Harris and his Imperial Fist. And this was a hammer and anvil deployment, which is like, okay, cool. What's the mission? Traitors must prevent the Loyalists from capturing their secret weapon research. Each enemy unit destroyed is worth 1 VP. If they were holding the objective, this increases to 2 VPs. The Loyalist player, each objective is worth 2 VPs at the end of the game turn. There are 4 objectives, 1 in each deployment zone and 2 across the middle. And the objectives can basically, 1 random, 1 becomes unstable, which didn't affect our game at all. It was always 1 that was irrelevant. So it's funny how that sometimes goes. So I've set up, he has got, it's Imperial Fists. He's got an autocannon heavy weapon squad. He's got guys with shields. He's got Terminators with a 3-up invulnerable. He took Warmonger to drop them, or just teleported them down actually, with whatever dude he had with them. He had a few dreadnoughts. He had rapier batteries with heavy bolters. It was like, oh, that's a lot of shots. Okay, and he can set up, deep as well, because he's got a 24-inch deep deployment zone. Okay, I'm going to put my stuff on the front line, and I'm going to barrel it forwards. And I think the one mistake Richard made here was he deployed stuff on that front line and didn't necessarily have his breach lined out like too wide or too deep.
Right.
They were kind of all bunches of stuff. So I was like, okay, cool. Let's see what we can do. We'll hit that side hard and blah, 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 blah. And we'll deal with the deep striking Terminators, which he thought about leaving on the table, but decided not to. Okay, cool. Well, he seized. I was like, oh, that's not cool.
Oh, good.
No worries. He's picked out my Lord of War. I think he did 11 wounds to it in the first turn. I've got a 4-up save.
Oh my god.
I've got a 4-up save. It's fine. And I think I saved like. Oh no, it was over. I think overall he did 11 wounds to it, and I saved like 2 of them. But he put him down to 2 wounds on the first turn. I mean, I had a couple of games in the others because they've also got It Will Not Die, all of them, 5-up. So I had a couple of games earlier on where it was like, oh, cool, this guy's on 2 wounds. Oh, he's gone down 1. He's gone back up to 2. But yeah, like when you go down to 2 wounds, your toughness 9, you go down to 2 wounds after the first turn. Like, that's not fun. I was like, oh, this game's gonna get tricky. Okay, no worries. It's all fine. We'll see what happens. Barrel it all forwards again.
He's feeling pretty good at this point.
Well, I don't know that he was, because he was still alive, and he thought he was going to deal with it.
Okay.
I think, and he hasn't touched anything else really. He might have killed a couple of, like a brute or something like that.
Yeah, he's really chosen to focus. Obviously, focus fire this thing down and not gone.
Yeah, I've like ran everything just to get further up the board. Tried to protect some stuff a little bit, But his turn 2, it's like, okay, cool. The reserves don't come down. Like the thing that probably changed the game more than anything else was he failed to get his reserves in, so the Terminators are still in the air. Like, oh, yeah. He then proceeds to took slightly more encouraging turn of events. He took like 3/4 of his armies to take the last couple of wounds off that Lord of War, the Archdemon.
Okay,
And
so
then,
it balances out a bit at this point. Okay.
yeah, a little bit. And then took some wounds off the Sovereign, I think. I was like, okay, cool, no worries, we got this, it's fine, honest. And I start to go in, and I can go into some breaches mainly, but I think I might have got into the autocannon squad early. No, it didn't. I got into something. It might have been the rapiers. It was something like that. But basically, there was one target where I could get in, which was like, cool. You left a space there. You probably shouldn't have left there. It was something I can't remember exactly which one it was. But I was like, okay. And at this point, I'm running everything else up because all of his line troops are on that line. All of his point scoring units are on that line. So yeah, he's holding that objective. But if I can get in there, in fact, it wasn't that turn, but yeah, so I can get in there, and I did enough to like wipe out the unit holding that objective on like turn 2 or whatever it was. But he's got nothing to come and get any of the other objectives, so then I don't need to worry about defending that. All I needed to do was put models in the way of deep strikes as much as possible. Anyway, turn 3, he gets the deep strike off. Cool. Puts his model down, rolls a scatter onto some of my units. I get to place it 18 inches away, and I'm like, there's not actually a good spot 18 inches away. The only good spot is behind my units, so he has to he can't charge anything big, which I did. So he's absolutely gone in and ruined whatever unit didn't even roll for it. Take it off them, but left the good units I've got still alive. And yeah, somehow just didn't lose much that turn. Might have been in combat. I think he held in a combat, so my sovereign couldn't be shot. It was that kind of thing. But essentially, I ended up charging my brutes into a dreadnought. No, it wasn't the brutes. I think it might be the hounds again. Into a dreadnought. It was anything. It was bloodletters at one point. It was harriers at one point. It was okay. What can charge what? And it was I think it might have been the harriers. They've gone in and just gone, cool, there's 9 of us. How many attacks you got? Like 4. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, you hit 3 times. Okay, you've killed 2. Brilliant. I lose another one. Perfect. I'm staying. And then by turn 3, the Sovereign's up, killing the other dreadnoughts. Like, he's gone to aim at dreadnoughts that can't hit him back. Luckily, didn't kill the first one on the first turn I charged, so I'm stuck in combat. Like the little bits that help out. Managed to do the double charge on the other side, to charging whatever into his autocannon, so I can charge a behemoth into the autocannons to do them, killing the unit that's on. That's right, the Sovereign failed his charge on one of these. Had failed like a 6-inch charge, left him hanging in the wind, but I managed to do some other bits and pieces. But like throwing stuff in and around his Terminators to stop them to be able to get anything useful. It was all that kind of desperation play.
Yeah.
But because I honestly think the way he set up, and then he would have been all right had the Terminators come down turn 2, and then had they not mishaps as well, which may be slightly aggressive with his deep striking, but I actually think I probably would have started them on the table, because I can't. The problem is, to take on a unit like that, I have to put 2 or even 3 things into it. And if I don't get it right, they've got Solarite power gauntlets. So the damage they are putting back on me is, I just can't take it. So even with the Sunder, even with the brutal 3+, he's got a 3 up invulnerable. He gets lucky with 1 or 2, and he's still got. It was a big unit. he's got enough left to kill me with these, actually. So, yeah, I think I personally probably would have left them on the table as a big line around his, even if it's just sitting around his unit that's on the objective scoring points, ready to countercharge where required. I don't know what the final score was, but it was fairly close because, again, no one was getting any points. He got last man standing, I think. Or maybe I did. I think I ran stuff away. I didn't get his warlord. And neither of us killed something. But it was... He would have scored a couple of turns, 4 VPs, I think, and I would have got about 5 or 6. It might have been 5. And that was, killing stuff that's on scoring the objectives again. So I ended up winning all 4 games somehow.
Wow.
And I think I got lucky in my
with that,
opponents.
Yeah.
I got lucky, definitely lucky game 3 with the terrain. I do think we talked about this before on this podcast. Having enough terrain for 50 tables at an independent event is tricky. But some of the tables, it felt like, okay, can't hide anywhere. Let's rely on some demon saves. But that also means you've got large lines of fire. So even in Space Marine versus Space Marine game, it can lead to shooting armies being even more powerful than they possibly already are, with the notable exceptions. But yeah, but it was a cracking event. It was, I say, I had 4 real fun games. There were some seriously good-looking armies. There seemed to be a lot of people that weren't regulars at that kind of point. There was quite a few new fresh faces, should we say? So there were a number of salamanders that I really liked. Some really cool armies that are on Instagram, like Josh the Water Beasts, White Scars, things like that. Quite a few that people have seen and stuff as well. But there was a lovely Salamanders force there with the orange was really like green with orange as the third kind of color, green, black, orange. And really, I think it was, I can't remember whose army it was now. Oh, let me see if I can find that. But I voted for them as my favorite army because they did like a favorite army vote, which is not a best painting.
Favorite army rather than best pet. I was going to say,
yeah.
That's a crucial differential.
Yeah. Because also there were some armies that were really well displayed, and there were most of them that weren't at all. Like there was just groups of models put in the area in the middle of one edge of the table, and you can't fit it all in one photo without being about 5 foot back. And there was a really heavily converted, I assume it was a Mechanicum force, that was really dark and grim. But after game 1, when they were first set out, it was on a really dark table, and it matched the bases quite well. But that meant it just faded into the table. So later on, when I saw it on a different table, it was like, okay, that's better. There was ones where, again, they did lava bases and they happened to be playing on a laverish table, and it was like, okay, it makes it harder to look at what you're looking at when it comes to displaying an army. When it comes to playing a game, it's cool. Displaying an army, it makes a difference. Then there were the armies where everything was fairly neat. There was one with about 5 or 6 Land Raiders. Felt like hundreds of them. And there was the Land Raider and the squad.
Was that an Ultramarines army?
Ultramarines one, yeah. And the
I've
squads
seen the photos of that circulating.
Well, yeah, they were lined up in front in like little groups with like 3 wide, and then like sergeant at the front or whatever it was. And it was neatly packed. It was laid out in a way that meant you could get a good look at it. You could see exactly what it was. It felt like you could take it all in. And then you move to another table and you think, God, these models are lovely, but you couldn't take it all in at the same time because it took up 5 foot of table. And I go back to in the Warhammer days, Fantasy Battle days, when the best army was becoming really competitive, and people started bringing their own cloth to lay on tables. So they were like,
Okay. Yeah.
there was a Russ Veal's Chaos Army, which you can see he's got a YouTube channel for Old World now. Facehammer. It might be wrong. That was his old podcast for Age of Sigmar. But he would bring that because he had a lovely Warriors of Chaos army that was like a greyish but lightish colour with then snow bases. You put it on I think he was one of the guys who did it with a black cloth. And maybe he wasn't. Maybe I'm doing him an injustice. But it stands out on the black, and because that Mechanicum army, the Dark Mech one, whatever it was, needed a light color behind it, maybe a light gray, because with the dark table, everything just molded into one, and you had to then go and really concentrate, and you almost wanted to bring a light over to see what was in it. But I mean, yeah, some fantastic armies. There was, I don't know if you saw that there was one army that got some interesting. It got taken up on the web, like these can do. That was
yes, I did hear about this a little bit afterwards. Yeah,
a cult army which had hundreds and hundreds of models on movement trays. That was was of not of the same standard as some of those armies. More like my standard of painting. But it was also a bit of a mix of different stuff, and actually had some proxies as well. There's been a lot of fuss about that, which is something I might want to talk about maybe another time. We're quite late at the moment, but and maybe how we deal with that
you've got into some detail on of the games, which I think is good. So maybe that's a separate topic. But yeah, I agree.
I think we will have to do that.
Yeah.
As a topic, because how you handle those kind of things as players and as event organisers has kind of come into the spotlight a little bit. And I've been a player with an army that's maybe not quite met the standard before at an event. We've talked about it here, how slow I am to paint, and I certainly don't. I'm not at the quality of painting that some people would prefer armies to be at, even when I do try hard. That's a completely different thing, in my opinion. But like what you do when you're struggling to meet the requirements and that kind of stuff. I say from every different person's viewpoint, could be quite an interesting one. My army doesn't have any psychic, has 2 shooting. Well, it technically has 3 units that can shoot. One of them never shot in 5 games. 2 of those models shot maybe 2 or maximum 3 times in any game. The game, and when I'm in combat, it's either rubbish stuff or good stuff with a few attacks. Which sometimes I can kill a Contemptor in one go, so you're not getting to attack me back, that kind of thing. I finished my games early. I had a lot of downtime. Okay. This is where I have a potential issue with the things. I finished the first game well before the food was ready, like 30, 40 minutes. A couple of other people had as well. I finished my last game well before the end. I actually left the event on the Sunday because I was shattered, absolutely shattered. In fact, I ended up taking the next day off work because I had a migraine brought on by being overly tired. I was useless on the Monday. I left an hour early, over an hour early, having not rushed packing up.
Wiped out. That feeling of being wiped out wasn't from the event per se.
No, it was a build-up of a lot of things.
Because you did have exactly. That was other factors, but as you say, really nice to not feel rushed as a result of that, because you can feel it when you're like, we're going to time on this dam. You're rushing around, and you got to get to the next game or whatever, or games run over. Feel quite the opposite of that is quite a nice feeling. I've heard that described before.
I don't necessarily like leaving early from events, but
no.
I
was thinking more finishing the games.
Yeah, I had a 2.5 hour drive home. Normally, added 2 hours to go and drop that table off to you. So it was like, okay, cool. I want to get home and get into bed. And obviously, even then it. But for my own safety as much as anything else, driving home tired, that kind of thing, can of monster only does so much. but yeah. So, but that's not. I don't necessarily hold that against the guys who run the events. It's just a thing. For Greetings, who run the event, who run the hosting of the venue and all that, absolutely brilliant. So they've done this. They've got it down pat to what they do. Andrew brings around a drinks trolley like during the games, and you pay on your card. You do that as snacks and drinks. The venue itself is pretty spacious. They make sure they don't overcrowd it. There's no food on. Well, no, sorry. There's no. The food on site is handled by them. They have their own kitchen. They do burgers and stuff. It's not necessarily cheap, but it's good food. The burgers I had first day were really good. Second day, the food wasn't necessarily my liking, but 2 miles up the road, there's a little Tesco's. There's a fish and chip shop. Actually, should have gone there instead. And you go the other way a few more miles, and there's quite a few more options as well. Really good. Neil, on the organisation of the actual gaming of the event, again, they've done this a lot of times. They know what they're doing. Absolutely, kind of slick in terms of people knowing what it's expected of them. There were things that came up, as we said, and maybe I sat down with Neil actually and had a talk about a lot of things in terms of event running. It was really interesting. I haven't done that with anyone for a while, partly because I haven't run an event since 2019. That was the last Blood and Glory, which I'm pretty sure was my last event because COVID hit, obviously not that long after. But I've seen people running events, and there's certain things, and I'm like, okay, it's an interesting way around of doing things. And we were just chatting about a lot of that, which I think potentially makes good topics for later again. How you deal with matchups, how you deal with army submissions or not, the pros and cons of that. I'm now in a group chat with some other event organisers where some of this has come up as well. Because, as I say, there's pros and cons to a lot of different things that need to be thought about by EOs, and also what's the expectation on players at events for some of this stuff as well. Sometimes Heresy players aren't very good at feedback. They will tell you they enjoyed the event. They will have a good fun. I had fun at this event. Cool, cheers. And actually, there were a few niggles that they don't want to tell you about because it's like I still had fun at the event, but the critical side of feedback doesn't always come that well. It tends to be when events are below expectation, and then it comes out in a slightly less useful manner, shall we say. I think that's fair. I know certainly my talking about the Barbarous event, certain people, or there has been some chat about me saying I didn't enjoy the event. I went back and listened to what we said about it, and definitely, and I reiterated, I'd go again. It was a fun event. There were things that I would have done differently. It wasn't my event. Like there were, was the advertising for what the event was going to be exactly what the event was, and maybe not. How much does that matter? Again, that's questionable. Fair play. There's I put my viewpoint on some. Essentially, there was one thing about the event that was a little bit for me. I would have liked to have been done differently, but I said in that event I enjoyed it, and yet I know that there has been some feedback that the people didn't think I liked the event, which may be coloured by other things as well, but who knows? Really,
it just shows how it is difficult to give feedback like that. Or if you're not giving feedback, to give an opinion on something in a way that doesn't come across as a criticism or an unfair criticism or a negative, particularly on something like an event, which obviously involves such a huge amount of work and potentially is going to be run again. It's a tricky one, and how things can be interpreted. I know you were quite cautious over that. As you said, we sort of discussed that, and you were cautious about giving that feedback, but equally, you want to say what you thought.
Yeah, I also have a tendency. I know this happens, that I say something absolutely believing that I've made it very clear, and turns out that people have misunderstood what I've said, so or misinterpreted, or I haven't said what I've said. I'm not necessarily just blaming other people for that.
You think you've said it one way. No, you think you've said it one way. It's come across another way. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. For whoever that may be. So no one's fault per se, but yeah, you know what I mean. So, but there were other things like we're talking about. There were quite a few people coming up going, well, this mission's impossible for loyalists or for traitors. And particularly with one of the ones, it was like, this mission's impossible for the traitors or impossible for me. And I was like, well, I think you can. I don't think it's necessarily easy, but I think you can. But Neil was like, just go and play it. Like, we've played it a couple of times, kind of thing. And then that person coming back going, yeah, it wasn't impossible because I won it. Like, which is always nice for the event organizer, I think, to see that. I do love the asymmetrical missions. I think that's something that works really well, but takes more. But I think we need to revisit a few aspects of event organizing and maybe how you then play your own games, and how event organizers might look at events, and maybe how event goers might need to, and even the people who are spectating from afar events, because as we said, some things happened at that event that went very quickly round groups and chats, and was brought up in places well before the event organizers had a true understanding of what was happening at the event. So we can talk about that maybe.
I think that's worthy of its own topic, because I think that will spiral into, or there's lots of angles to take that from. There's lots of tangents to explore. I think that's worthy of its own conversation.
Yeah. So I hope my games weren't too dull to listen to. The demons, I've complained about them before. I think I got lucky in terms of being able to be competitive in over 4 games. Had I faced the White Scars armies in probably any of those missions, I very much doubt I would have scored many, if any, VPs, because I just wouldn't have been able to lay a hand on them. And there were a few, I say the Ultramarines army, like not necessarily the hardest army in the world when it's 5 Land Raiders, but against me again, there's a chance that I do very little to him, and he can then play the game and be very careful as to what they do back, that kind of thing. So with all these things, you need a bit of luck in the matchup. When that's the nature of the Heresy game we play as well, isn't it? So yeah, I think I just want to come out of that and say, Attrition Gaming, if you're ever thinking about going to one of the events, they've run plenty. The team know what they're doing. They're very good, friendly guys. If I lived closer, I'd be trying to go to more. And greetings from the Warp, in terms of putting on the venue and everything else, even outside of them running their own events. They do a sterling work as well. So you know that if you're going there, you can expect the ancillary stuff. Like, it's not going to be crap. The food's going to be good. You're going to be, made to feel welcome. All that kind of stuff. Cool.
That sounds like a solid recommendation for it. I'm gutted I couldn't make it. I'll keep that one on the radar.
Yeah, we'll have to do one. We'll have to sort one out, won't we? At some point, we can.
I'd enjoy that.
That'd be cool. Yeah. Awesome.
Cool. Thank you very much. Good stuff.
So it turns out you don't have a single addendum for months and months and months, and then 2 pop along in one episode. I just wanted to just come back and talk about the event and in relation to other events. I was thinking about this after recording and during editing particularly. The way I had described the event and the organisation and everything else. And during that, I couldn't help but kind of reflect it back to the previous event that we talked about down in Eastbourne. And actually, on the surface of it, the way I've described the organisation, there's not a great deal of difference. Not loose background, but background that's there, but not necessarily in your face the whole time. And the way we chose games in this one was to pick a random table, like literally pick a raffle ticket out of a hat, and sort of left to get on with it. Now, in this occasion, I didn't have as much an issue with it as I did in the previous occasion, obviously from the way I was talking. Not that I had a major issue with the other one, but I was trying to work out, okay, so I have talked about this in a slightly different tone to the way I've talked about a previous event. And actually, is that right? Is that fair? On either of the events, is that fair? And why? And essentially, I think it all comes down to presentation. And maybe this is just partly my fault as well. Maybe I didn't look at the packs quite as closely, compared to each other as I could have. Or maybe it was the way it was handled on the day. Certainly, the event in Eastbourne with Tom was a lot of people that he knew. Tom's quite a laid back, quite a loose, kind of chilled vibe kind of guy as well. And Neil was a little bit more get things done, a little bit like tenser on the day, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a different way of going about it. But I feel maybe that ultra relaxed atmosphere came over towards me in a different way down in Eastbourne than it did at Greetings at the Dark Inferno event from Attrition and Greetings. And I just wanted to kind of throw a bit in here to kind of show that a similar way of running an event can come across differently. And you know what? There are people out there who would disagree with what I said about Eastbourne as well. It's just going to come across differently to different people, and that's fine. That is what it is. And maybe next time I go to an event where it feels that little bit loose, I've got to stop and actually think, yeah, cool, not a problem. Neither events had extra rules being thrown on outside of what was written for the packs or anything like that. Again, that's fine. That's cool. That's sensible sometimes for running events. And it's just a different style than, someone who's setting up or not even a bit more active, because actually in Eastbourne, Tom was organising matchups on tables, but the nature of the way the kind of chilled, relaxed nature of it kind of flowed out towards to me in a different manner, if you get what I mean. Probably going around circles a little bit on this one, but I just thought it was important that if I'm going to give feedback about things and give critique, that actually I realised that maybe there was something in that I come on and talk through and don't just leave it out there. So yeah, it's made me look back at both events differently, made me look at other events that I go to and the ones I run as well. There's nothing wrong with any of these different ways of putting on events. My expectations on one were slightly different from the feel I got at that event. Now, as I say again, that could be down to the way it was put across, or it just could be my perception of the way it's put across, which is important as well. Perception is everything, as they say. But maybe I bought something different to that. So I need to be, as someone reporting on this, and maybe we as gamers going to events, just need to be aware of that when we're talking about them. Serious, topic maybe, like a little bit deeper than even we normally go. But interesting. So next time I go to an Attrition event, I'll have that in mind. If I go down to Eastbourne again to one of Tom's events, maybe I bear that in mind, and maybe I change in my approach to those events, because that's what it can be as well. And sometimes it can literally be, I was really tired at that event. That can also affect the way, what you bring to an event can change your feel of it as well. If you come in pumped up because you've got a brand new army and you're going to do this and and you're going to try new things out and what have you, then that's going to feel different to, I've played this army for however many games in a row. I know what it does. I'm a bit tired. I was, rushing around trying to get everything ready. That's maybe going to affect it as well. So, particularly as someone reporting about these things, I say reporting, not in a too serious context on that one, but someone talking about these events that I've been to, particularly, but maybe even just on the way back from an event where I'm not talking about it afterwards. I just need to be aware of the kind of surrounds that go into how I feel about that event. So yeah, I just wanted to add that on there in terms of fairness and as just kind of as a thought-provoking thing as well. Last time you went to an event and had kind of, we talked before actually. So we've talked before. You can go to an average event and you can play 5 brilliant people and it elevates an event. You can go to an amazingly run event, have some personality clashes, and come away from that event not necessarily feeling, is that the event's fault? Not really. It's just luck of the draw sometimes. So, as I say, just being aware of what is, and sometimes on the drive back from these, I drove back from Northampton by myself, but if you've got someone in the car or you're on the train with someone, you talk through these things, sometimes that comes out a bit more as well. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there in just to be as honest and upfront and as fair to each of those events as I possibly can. Right, we've done it. We have condensed the whole Horus Heresy down to the 5 top moments, scenes / whatever of the whole Heresy. This is official.
Who knew? Who knew that's all it needed to be? You could just distill it down, and actually, who needs all those novels? Who needs those millions of words of?
I will pose for a YouTube. I will pose for a YouTube cover picture.
Thumbnail, yeah.
Thumbnail, that's the one, of these 5 moments are all you need to know about the Horus Heresy.
Those 5 moments might surprise you, yeah.
Yeah, number 3 will shock you. They always pick a random number for obviously it's not that shocking if it's not number 1. But hey ho, whatever. So this is about as official as our Primarch rankings. Way less official than our Primarch rankings were pretty good.
Yeah, I was going to say that was considerably more researched.
Even if it was old edition.
Was a much bigger involved. Yeah.
We so top 5 moments. Moments is loose. Moments, scenes, things.
I was going to say, I immediately went over the top and started to, let's define moments. Do we mean memorable moments? Top moments? What does top mean? Let's not go too far into that.
It's vague. It's vague as we need it to be.
It's deliberately vague.
Top 5 is also to the point where you're not even going to rank them. I have ranked them because I'm not a wuss.
No, I can't do it. I can't do it. I took it as most memorable moments and I've ordered them chronologically as they appear in the Heresy sequence because I can't put the favourites in this.
Chronologically,
there you go.
As in when they were written, or chronologically?
I knew it was coming. When were they published, or in the Heresy timeline? Let's put it that way.
Yes. Okay. Cool. And my top 5 obviously are absolutely set in stone and won't change about 10 minutes after we get off the call.
I mean, as you say, this became considerably harder than I thought it was. I smashed a list out and thought, that's fine. 15 points later, and then even in the moments before we started recording this, we're rattling off others. So yeah, there's a lot more to this than I thought there were. But
I think
I've gone for the slightly more classic choices, I think, because I've gone, as I say, I've gone from ones I didn't even want to look at a list of the titles of books. I'm not hipster, Greg. I'm not going for the niche
hey, look how cool I am because I've chosen this obscure secondary. No, I've gone top memorable moments that stand out to me that make me go, I need to reread that book because that book was cool.
Howard doesn't have an imagination.
So, as I desperately try and defend my choices. What about yours?
Yeah.
What's the theme of yours? Have you got a theme, or have you just gone, "Hey, look how cool I am"? Because I can remember this obscure piece of lore.
I will talk through why. So, pre-Heresy novels being released, how much did you know Heresy-wise, or 40k-wise? How deep were you in the lore?
Reasonably, because my entry point into the hobby was Epic Space Marine.
Sure.
And Epic Space Marine was set in Heresy, and had quite a bit on it from that perspective, albeit an earlier version of it. So I had quite a bit from that, and obviously in some of the source books. But my entry into 40k was through the Blood Angels, Angels of Death Codex, which, because Sanguinius and Lionel Johnson are covered in that, there's quite a bit of Heresy era stuff is covered in there. So I knew a fair bit, I'd like to say, what existed at the time. But
so,
what about you?
I mean, like we used to talk about it when I was working with GW back in the day as a black shirt. We'd talk about the various little snippets, and we'd talk about like the possibility of the legions and what that meant and all that kind of stuff. So some of mine have very much come from. So it's weird now. Heresy as a game is 12 years old as of this week of recording, and there's been a lot of people who've got into it when it's been fairly thrashed out. It's been fairly expanded upon and what have you. When I started reading these books, there was very little known. There was very little sets down, and some of the shocks are maybe less shocking now than they were back then. So hey, that's kind of where I'm coming from. So pick. What was the? Are you starting with earliest or latest in your timeline?
I'm starting early. I'm working towards the end.
Go for it. Go for it. Then.
First one. This one that still stands in my mind is the point where Horus teleports in. You're first introduced to Horus in Horus Rising, and he reaches down and picks up and grabs Loken's hand and just pulls him back up off the precipice.
Oh yeah.
That as a moment, it was a very more so. I mean, the opening line, very famous.
Often misquoted,
but just
not even often misquoted, almost universally misquoted.
The gist of that opening line is often quoted, but I found that was a almost hairs on the back of the neck standing up kind of moment. You're like, whoa, okay. It was a real sense of, let's go. This is going to be awesome. It just culminated all of that opening act, if you like, and just really set the scene. And it's one I still think back to. I could easily remember, easily call it to mind from Horus Rising at that moment of, you're really going to see the spectacle of what a Primarch is, what a Legion is, the era, how they are, the setting. I thought it captured my attention.
So
superbly.
That kind of highlights what I was talking about, actually. This was the first time we got, first proper time we got to see a Primarch. Yes, we've had Primarchs in Epic and what have you, and there's bits about them in books, but there were no Primarchs around in game. There were no Primarchs around really in stories. They were always that kind of kept back, kept a distance, all that kind of stuff.
They were described about as historic characters.
Yes.
This was in the moment, an action scene, absolutely central to the whole thing. Superb, blew me away at the time.
And now if you were to get into the hobby, you'd see Primarchs in 40k doing stuff, and they're just part of the fabric. Back then, it was like, whoa, we're going to get to see Horus chat. So it kind of highlights what I was talking about.
It was also, as you say, it was slightly subverting because the images, of course, at that point was him as War Master, his embodiment as a pantheon of chaos in all this aspect of him. To then see him as this shining beacon of glorious Imperium was also quite a big deal. Of like, oh, okay, there's a whole perspective here that I won't have explored before, I won't have appreciated. So, yeah, that really stood out to me. It was one I vividly remember. Over to you.
Cool. I think I'm going to go for Yasugai of the White Scars, sitting on a throne, sacrificing himself for the White Scars to be able to go home.
I've heard that described as that moment as people looking over and seeing grown men crying in as they were poring over that on the day of release, or near about thereabouts in either in Bugman's or in cafes or wherever it was being read on the group. It was a significant moment.
Yeah, Chris has an ability to write characters, like the actual writing of characters, that is possibly unparalleled in the Heresy, in the Games Workshop that I've read, the Games Workshop kind of stable, as it were. And this journey that Scars have gone on, which it helps that he'd written novellas and novels that were amazing, and the White Scars, the psychos are what they called again, Mike. Stormseers. The Stormseers felt different. Sort of in a mirror way to the way that the Space Wolves, the psychos feel different. But the Stormseers seem to have it all together and be very confident of it and know what they're doing. And he had, Yasugo is a great character for starters, so it always hurts more. It's always much more impactful when it's the person you don't want to die. And he knows what he can achieve by making his sacrifice. And it wasn't until we did this I was like, oh yeah, that is a good shout. So yeah, I'm going for Yasugai. Cool. Nice. Hit me with another.
Bit of a cheat because I'm not going for a specific moment. I've got a few cheats on this list, but this one was the opening moments of the betrayal at Calth. Now, I was tempted to go, there's a couple of ones there that I would capture, but they all happen pretty much simultaneously, or very close to. The Campanile smashing into the fleet yards and the fleet and the fleet conjunction around Calth, which kicks off the betrayal at Calth. The moment that and I should have had their names ready for this if I'd have been properly researched, but I don't have them. The Word Bearer's Sergeant meeting his counterpart Ultramarine Sergeant, who are close from having fought together in the Great Crusade, and unlike the rest of their legion, who there was clear animosity between the two legions after Monarchian, these two are still close. And the betrayal at that moment of the Word Bearer onto his Ultramarine counterpart, those two sort of moments simultaneously, if you like. And then perhaps even slightly after that, as Guilliman is one of the first to realise there's intent here. This is not an accident. Those moments, that sort of point that spans that, I think that was a hell of a moment, because I've been looking forward to Calth. I remember that again, is perhaps talking about personal memories of that, but you're looking forward to that as it's quite a prescribed part of the heresy. But the way it was set out in that book, it was a superb way. Not only capturing a bit of a sense of what the Ultramarines, which hadn't really been looked at in detail at that point, capturing a sense of what they were about in a cool way, but also capturing a very significant prescribed moment with considerable power. I very much enjoyed that and still do. The imagery there is very strong.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, fair play.
Yours?
Mine's the first of the. We know that it has to happen, but we haven't seen, or we know that it happens. Not necessarily that it has to happen. We know that it has been written about before, and we want to see it. And it's Sanguinius versus Angron on Terra.
Yes,
at the gate.
That was on my list.
The fight in itself was good.
Mm.
The brutality that comes from Sanguinius to end the fight is sublime, because it shows why Erebus wanted to go after the Blood Angels. It shows that even the most noble can, does what he has to do to win the fight. And it was unexpected, brutal, and brilliant.
And lived up to something that had very high, uncomfortably high expectations.
Yeah.
To live up to that, I think, is no mean feat.
Yeah, and it's weird because partly because of maybe a little bit partly because of the way the fight with Angrath goes, not Angrath, Karbanda goes. But like back in the day, we talked about Sanguinius versus Karbanda. That was the big fight for Sanguinius on Terra before going up. Now this one surpasses the which in a way happens because of what happens in Fear to Dread as well, because essentially you get kind of both fights there. But yeah, brilliant, brutal,
strong. That was, I had Sanguinius at the Eternity Gate, which obviously is a little bit later, but I had that for a while on this list, on my cut down lists. That had to go, but yeah, that's a biggie.
Cool, go for it.
Dawn and Alfarius at Pluto. So quite late, quite a jump. Wasn't expecting it.
Sure.
It was Dawn stepping out, and I don't think we had seen much, if any, of Dawn taking an active combat role he was absolutely doing what he had to do in fortifying and preparing. But that was a significant moment of him stepping out, and then him coming up against Alfarius, who had been in the shadows, who was also, it was somewhat unexpected to have the Alfarius, to have the Alpha Legion striking that sort of almost opening moves of the Siege of Terror, or a prelude to, for that to culminate in a Primarch versus Primarch fight, and then for it to end the way that it did, was one of those sit up and take notice moments. Was
for sure.
Oh wow, this has happened. Oh my, has that actually happened? Which is obviously one of the major parts of the Alpha Legions. Has that actually? But it became very clear. No, that has actually happened. That outcome is hugely significant.
And we'd sort of settled into a we know what's coming period as well. Of the Heresy.
Yeah.
So we ended up. This gave us a kind of, do you really know what's going on in the Heresy moment? And didn't fit within all that we knew that was going on and everything else. It was a really, really brave moment almost to put into that book.
It was.
So my third one is again another moment. This one we definitely knew we had to see, and it was like, quite how does it happen? And it's Russ and Magnus fighting, and Russ breaking Magnus over his knee, because Magnus deserved everything he got, and probably more, and it was brutal. So good.
I mean, all of
again lived up.
In many ways, but it was
but lived up to the expectation as well. I'm trying to remember exactly how many kind of Primarch versus Primarch fights we knew about beforehand. It's not that many really, but I think this one was one of, obviously, Horus versus Sanguinius is the big one, but I think this one was the next one for a lot of people, and particularly because it's all-powerful Magnus.
Yeah,
and it's like how does Russ, do it invading his home planet and everything else? So, yeah,
that is a good one.
Cool. Yeah.
This was a very close run thing for my number one, and I'm gonna. I collapsed these into a single point, but I think the one that edges it for me, because there was two really vying for this position. It's both in Saturnine. Both sort of singular moments for a singular character. The one that I think edges it for me, if I have to pick one, is Camber Diaz. Camber Diaz's last stand, his line in the set, his line and no step backwards moment as the World Eaters wash over him to sweep in and take the spaceport. And he stood there, and the way that is described, and it sort of comes out of nowhere. I know Mr. Abnett has described, I think he describes in the author commentary of that book, that he knew he was going to have lots of these kinds of conflicts or moments of fighting, and he wanted to very deliberately describe them in very different ways, to find unique ways within that book, so that they all stood out for their own different thing. That one really did the sort of relentlessness. It's the equivalent of, for those who were keen on Game of Thrones, the Battle of the Bastards, this suffocating, crushing depiction of what fighting was going to be, or that of sort of particularly sword fighting. That was a big one. Very close run. Virtually impossible to take it. I mean, there's so many moments in Saturnine, but the other one being Abaddon's similar moment where Abaddon is snatched away, taken away, and his reflections and the way he's screaming to be held there. That was a very close run thing. But I think Camber Diaz takes it for me.
Yeah. I think we'll talk about Saturnine in and of itself after we finish this little run through. But Camber Diaz moment was one of the. It had a whole series of moments, like Camber Diaz was one of those kind of that the cinema would react in a way that would slightly annoy me because I'm very English. I'm not American at all. But it's
very happy to watch on YouTube
like,
though, but not.
You're like boom, 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 boom. Yeah, smashing it. Cool, awesome. So I'm going to go back to the aspect of the heresy where we got our first major, I think the first huge lore drop into the heresy, which is the unveiling of Omegon.
Yeah.
Now, I've told this story before on this podcast, probably a few times, but there's a lot of episodes, so I'll tell you again. I once met a guy who was in the Games Workshop store in Tunbridge Wells buying heresy books. We got chatting. I said, do you play or whatever? He said, no, I don't play any games, just read the books. I said, why do you read the books? He said, because I know James Swallow, I think it was, and I happened to see one of his books, and I read it, and I went back and started the whole heresy because he read like Flight of the Eyes and or whatever, something along those lines. And we were talking about Legion. I said that. He goes, well, of course there are two, Alpha and the Omega. And it's like, okay, cool, yeah. I suppose if you come in with a fresh slate, with an open mind, you would jump to that conclusion. When you're in Games Workshop and every book you've ever read has talked about 20 Primarchs, and just 20 Primarchs and 2 have been scrubbed out. There are only 18 Primarchs. There have only been 18 Primarchs. And that's been so ingrained, like that subconsciously you couldn't even consider the fact that one would be twins. So it came as this bombshell, which actually is kind of obvious. And if you can find the Dan Abnett interview, I think it might be on YouTube, where he talks about Legion. And he went to the people in the know, would have been what's his name at the time, who's left now, who's in charge of all that stuff. Alan Merritt, that's the guy, and said, he would have been one of the people anyway, and said, I want to do these 4, 5, 6 things, thinking, that's all right, they'll, I can let these 3 go, don't care about them, I really want 1 and 2, and hopefully 3. And he went, yep, you can do all of that. By the way, we've always thought that Alpharis had a twin. Like, whoa, that's a cool idea. Let's run with that. And now it's like the 2 defining features of the Alpha Legion are I am Alpharius and I am Omegon. Like when you on the meme level particularly. So it changed everything. And it was like, and this is what, book 6 Legion?
It was quite early doors, wasn't it? It was quite early doors.
It was like, whoa, cool. It doesn't break any knowledge that we had before. I mean, not that everything's sacred and didn't need breaking or what have you, but it fit within what we knew, and it changed the very nature of the Alpha League. There were already secrets and lies, but now they were like seriously secrets and lies. And yeah, it was
the fact that it did. Yeah, the upending of it was a brilliant move, and it just fit so well. And it was, as you say, it's become such a significant piece of the.
I suppose the 2 things are right.
I overlooked it.
Yeah. Which side? Yeah, because it's part of the fabric now.
Because it's so established. I took it for granted.
Yeah. I suppose the other part of that, which I didn't even think of myself, was which side of the Alpha Legion on? Because before that book, they were a Chaos faction. They were bad guys. And now, are they bad guys for good reasons? Which is kind of paradoxical. But that's the other side of it. But Omegon is the one that really flashes out for me. Cool. Last one.
And it was almost a last-minute addition here, which is why mine is in a chronological order rather than trying to choose one as being top. But the Saturnine again. Fulgrim is stood over the injured middle-ranking captain, who he's clearly beaten. First Sigismund gets involved, then Dawn gets involved. That whole sequence, that whole fight, the exchange between Fulgrim and Dawn, even seeing Sigismund get involved beforehand and represent everything he is, but particularly where Fulgrim and Dawn square off against each other and how it represents who they are and where they are at that moment in time. Huge fan of that, and it was so atmospheric. It was such a big movie moment. I mean, as you say, we'll probably touch on this. I've got at least two items on here that are from Saturnine. I think it really showcases we've gushed over Saturnine many times, but it really showcases that, and it's just trying to pick those moments from it that that really make it stand out in that way.
Yeah, and we didn't expect to see much of Fulgrim on Terra, but I know some people have a problem with the way Fulgrim left that fight. I think it was absolutely perfect for Fulgrim's character, and which Dan sometimes doesn't necessarily hit that, but yeah, it worked brilliantly for me as a new piece to go in that. It was absolutely brilliant. Yeah, we will touch on that in a second. For me, it was in oh blimey. What's the Titan fight in what's the Titan book in the Siege of Terror? That one after Saturnine. Mortis, that's the one. It's Mortis.
I had a Mortis item on this list.
There's a very small element of Mortis. But it's Perturabo who finally realizes that Horus has broken the contract, the deal he had. The deal was that Perturabo got to break Terra and got to do it his way, and Horus took that away from him. So Perturabo goes, cool, I'm out of here. 2 fingers up to you, mate. And by the way, taking my Legion with me.
Yeah.
And for all that, I I saw someone talking about Perturabo, like, you know, he should have been defending Terra. Like, it's like, well, Perturabo has major character flaws and was never going to be that good guy. But he also only stuck with Horus because he gave him his promise, and he didn't want to be a vow breaker twice. Which is, you know, A, stupid, but B, quite sad. But once he finally had that broken, he was just like, yeah, this is not what I signed up for, and therefore I'm not part of it, and left.
Yeah.
Boom. See you later. And that something so simple, so so not grandstanding about it, which fits Perturabo brilliantly, but it's like that small bit of silence in the storm that when you get it, when you're in it, it's almost deafening silence because you know what's going on around you. Is all these grand things are happening, and Perturabo just gets up and goes, "Cool stuff, you fight. I'm off."
Yeah.
And then his actions allow the Dark Angels to get in and all
the
that.
way
as
it's
well.
described. The way it's described is cool as well. The way he withdraws, I think it was very, very well handled because that could have been,
and
that could have
it's
come
not
across in a way that would be it could have come across quite poorly. And actually, I don't think it did because you kind of understood what his motivations were entirely.
He's completely aware of he's had it with this, and he's finally allowed to do, according to his own system, he's allowed to do it, and he knows there's going to be a price to pay. He's not stupid. Like, he knows there's going to be a price to pay, but this is Perturabo. He's willing to pay it. Which is really strange. It's just one of those moments that really I just love about the whole heresy. It's just that little bit of, like, you know, he is sticking to this hyper accentuated attribute of a character shown in its lot. So yeah, Perturabo.
I had a moment. I had a moment that I only just took off this list, but very similar, very close in time to that one. Which because Mortis, some people I know it can be a bit of found that book a slog or otherwise. I think there's some I really enjoy Mortis a lot actually, for its tension is enormous. There's a moment in that book where Dawn declares that the wall is broken. They're through when Mortis breaking, and I think that the gravitas that is delivered with is a huge moment as well. That nearly made my list. Didn't quite get there because I already had enough from there in that point, but that was in a very close to that chronologically. But yeah, I agree with you. It's making me want to reread so many of these books now.
Yeah, so let's touch on Saturnine before we go into everything else. I could easily do a top 5 Saturnine. Camber Diaz was an option. The tunnel fighting in itself is an option. Abaddon's in a monologue is an option. Dawn's fighting there. I'm trying to think what else. So much stuff happens in that book that could be in there.
I don't remember what happens in the early acts, but yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just so much is going on in Saturnine. Kroll. That's in Saturnine, isn't it? Yeah. The raising of the flag. That's all that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that whole flag sequence. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Janisha
there is a
Kroll,
lot going on. There's a lot of knowledge drops. That's the book that Astartes is revealed?
She introduced at that point? No,
I think it's revealed what is she not? I thought it was. I thought that was Dan.
Yeah, possibly.
I could be wrong.
Or was it a bit later? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I thought that might be Echoes of Eternity.
Maybe. Well, yeah. It's that's the other problem with the books, right? Trying to remember where everything happens.
Where they are, yeah.
Yeah, Saturnine in itself, as I say, it's one of my top, certainly, possibly the best book in the whole of the Black Library. Certainly in the top 3. So.
It's an interesting topic to put because I put this out to a couple of friends and was seeking what they thought about that, and it's everyone's got their own. and there's always these odd little ones that come out of nowhere that you thought, oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's such a cool moment. I mean, they mentioned some of the more obscure short stories, or obscure, they became very famous, but things like Blood Games came up, The Last Church came up, Death of a Silversmith came up. These sorts of the significant beats in those books. Interestingly, not specific moments from those stories, but it was more what they represented. Although, yeah, there's a few of those that were unexpected, but there's lots of these that come up with when people are doing this. I'd love to hear what people's
for sure. I mean,
what people's specific top moments are.
In with a shout were the opening scene of Fear to Tread when the Blood Angels drop.
Yes.
Right. That's a point where my best mate Dan was like, "I'm collecting Blood Angels," and I was almost the same.
Yeah.
Dawn versus Alpharis was almost on mine for very much the same reasons. The discovery of the Void Dragon on Mars. Again, now the Void Dragon's in 40k. Cool. Back before that book, which alluded to the Void Dragon, didn't name him. There was rumours of it. There was a very short fluff piece in Battlefleet Gothic which talked about 3 Necron Jackal ships, I think they were.
Good knowledge. Love it.
I could be wrong, but certainly Jackals are Necron ships.
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right.
That raced their way, or only became visible once they were inside the defences, the space defences of Mars, and then flew onwards, and only one of them touched the floor and was blown up like seconds later. There was no way they were going to get out of that. So the fact they did it at all says something.
There was some. I think it was possibly part of the same story that the information, a sort of a messenger, a lowly messenger brings some information, or brings a report of that, or brings a report of something that they're aware of on Mars to Abaddon, and Abaddon is just laughing.
All right, there was a communications. They picked up a communication piece or something like that. Russ causing Horus a split second of doubt on Vengeful Spirit, or awesome moment.
Fulgrim and Manus.
Fulgrim and Manus. Argyle Tal's death.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, talk about impactful moments. Angron almost being crushed by a Titan, lifting it off of him. Guilliman fighting outside the spaceship. Like so many various ones with Loken. I've seen people pick up various things around Loken's fights and that kind of thing. So many, and some of them big, some of them small. I'm sure there's some of the really, really small bits when I can never remember her name. The woman who's attached to the White Scars to organise them.
Oh,
goes on to be a major player on the way through.
I always think of her as the name that they refer to as Zoo. Yeah,
Zoo.
I can't remember her full name. Yeah,
but the short story before Scars, where she sat waiting for, waiting for the calm. Even the Khan's got a few moments when he's just like, yeah, these aren't the rules I live by. Like, your Imperium is not my rules. Like, I know what to do. It's fine. I will do what I need to do. Get over it. Yeah, there's so many cool little bits. The Raven Guard hitting their warp drives when they've got people right on their tail to blow them out of the water, trying to get away from Isfan. All that kind of stuff. Oh, Thal's a brilliant moment. Like,
yes, that was in my first iteration of my list. Yeah,
when they're like, they've got them. They're going to deal a massive blow to the Iron Warriors, but they have to follow the orders, and therefore they get pulled back. Like those kind of little moments that, again, there's so many little short stories that have brilliant moments.
Stotha was a big one as well.
Yeah,
because that was another bit. Was that there's a load of additional lore here that we just hadn't. For me, they were echoing forward.
Yes, yeah, very much. Again, in a short story, that final bit. The For me, there were short stories which didn't fit moments. There's like The Last Church. There's War Master, where Horus is talking to Ferris's skull. Things like that, which didn't really fit the moments section, but brilliant. I might have to go back and listen to War Master and a few of those again.
I actually listened to that because I wanted to have a bit of a dive back into the Sons of Horus. And I've mentioned it before. There's that brilliant list of where various legions are featured or are the central protagonists in a story or otherwise. War Master was one of them. So I have actually listened to that quite recently, and it goodness me, it really stands up.
Yeah.
I think Dark Compliance was an audio that came out at a similar time. That's also worth a listen. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and the other one was the Bell. I can't remember what the story's called. When the City Light's talking to his personal friend, the Laurie Golding.
Oh yes.
Audio. What is it called? Is it the last? Based on the last bell ringing, isn't it? Audio. Audio was a short, wasn't it?
No way am I going to remember that.
There we go. It's not the weakness of others. That's something else. Let me try and find Laurie Golding books here and try and was it an ebook? So many. I want to find what it's called now.
Was it a book or was it an audio?
Was it an audio or was it an ebook? Laurie Golding, Heresy. See if I can Google it. The Long Night? No. No.
First Lord of the Imperium? No.
No. Let's see if Lexicanum can do it.
This is good listening, isn't it?
Yeah, isn't it? And look stuff up online.
Do people have slightly sketchy memories?
Yeah, indeed. It's not First Lord of the Imperium, is it? Is it Last Council? No.
Well, that sounds possible. Yes, it is. It is this one. It is First Lord of the Imperium.
It is First Lord of the Imperium.
As the Horus Heresy rages and the death toll rises, one more will be added to the numerous numbers. Sibel Niasta, personal astropath to the First Lord of the Imperium. As her end approaches, Malcador sits vigil by her bedside. Pair discuss their friendship and what it means, and how the past and present have shaped Malcador and the Imperium, and what the future holds. Yeah, there's some pretty big stuff in that. That was an advent calendar when that was first released.
That's right. And there's that mixes up, like that throws a few spanners into the works of what can be trusted, what do we know, what is real, what is conjecture, what is being used to their own ends, all that kind of stuff. So lots of those. Yeah, let us know, and maybe we'll revisit this with another kind of a take on this in a different way, so we're not repeating ourselves, but we're
I'd be interested to see other people's interpretation of what top means. Like I say, I immediately went to most memorable, but how would other people do it? Most shocking? I mean, it still gets a bit YouTube maybe titles in, doesn't it? Is it most memorable, most significant, most even most maybe is the wrong word. Most obscure.
I mean, memorable is always going to be part of it because you have to remember them. To be top, they have to be fairly memorable. But absolutely. We've done. Some of these are very personal to me. Like that Perturabo one's not going to hit for everyone, but it hits for me every time. Sanguinius.
When I was going through trying to think of these, I thought he's definitely going to pick that one.
What? Perturabo? Yeah, I mean, I've talked about that enough, haven't I?
That is definitely going to be on Greg's list.
And it depends how you read books as well. Like it for me, those kind of characterful moments are what I'm looking for. Some people I want to know what happens in this big battle. And for me, that's much less interesting than looking at the character in itself. And just as we're going to finish this up. I'm literally looked up something on Facebook, and Dan Abnett will be at Maidstone Lit Fest signing Tuesday, 8th of October, 7 to 8 p.m. at Waterstones in Maidstone. So you can go and get your books signed there with a picture of End and Death Part 3 there. So if you're around on Tuesday the 8th of October, maybe I could potentially make my way over there. Who knows? If it's if I've actually got any physical books by Dan Abnett anymore. Who knows? Anyway, I've got a comic. I can certainly get that signed. Wonderful. We'll leave that there.
Good chat. Enjoyed that.
Yes, indeed.
Speak to you soon, Greg. Have a good one.
Excellent stuff. You've made it to the end of another episode of The Imperial Truth. Thank you for listening. We're going to be, next episode, what we're going to have, Golden Demon's going to be done. There's Heresy Thursdays are going to be back. We're going to have more to talk about. Hopefully we'll have some feedback from you guys about the top fives and maybe the events as well and whatever. Looking forward to next episode a lot, actually. And there might be a bonus episode coming as well, so keep your eyes out for that one. If you do have any feedback, any questions, anything you want us to cover, anything like that, then please feel free to get in touch, Greg, at theimperialtruth.com. You can get us on Twitter as well, Imperial_Truth, Facebook page, search for Imperial Truth, and yeah, all the usual lot. It's all in the show notes. We've got a Patreon. If you really feel like supporting us, you can follow on the Patreon for free, actually. There's not a lot that happens on the Patreon. You know, it's very much a process for allowing people who wish to support the show to support the show. There's nothing extra. I don't post on there anything that really doesn't get posted anywhere else. But if you wish to, you can use Patreon as well. And for anyone who does, we are thankful. We've got the merch links as well. We've got we've got Element Games, of course. All your support from all those guys all really helps just pay the little running costs we have for the show, and things like sending stuff on to Howard, that if we're sharing out stuff that GW gets done, because it's more likely that Howard's going to paint it than I am, and he's definitely going to paint it better than I am, so it's nice to be able to do that. But yeah, I think that's probably about it. As we're going into the darker months, we're in the painting time. Summer's over. It's time to sit indoors and do some painting. So on the Facebook page, on the Twitter, if you ever feel like you want to tag us in a photo of what you're painting heresy-wise, please feel free to do it, because we all like seeing cool models, don't we? So yes. Anyway, I will leave that there, and we will see you next time. You have been listening to The Imperial Truth.